Hello, everyone, and welcome to SmashBoxxTV podcast 531.
Bum 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 bum.
Yet again, here on an election night. Why do they keep scheduling them on Tuesdays?
I don't understand why they keep putting him against us.
Well, I don't think there's much to... there's not much else going on in disc golf, so that's a good start. Things are a little bit slow. We're going to talk about some of the tournaments that took place over the last weekend. I'll give you guys a quick update. Last week, we were live and on the show with Paul Macbeth Foundation peeps as I was still in Uruguay. Shortly after that, headed over to Guatemala. And just outside of Guatemala is where I was able to see another Paul Macbeth Foundation course, and Chris and the crew there and everyone else. So I'm excited to give a few updates as to that and what all took place there last weekend. Or a few days ago, I should say. And then in probably about 25 minutes or so, we're going to have the PDGA's own Robert Leonard join us. There is conversation about some of the rules changes, and I want everyone to, and I don't want to go through every single detail of every single word. That's all out there on the PDGA. However, I am excited about the idea of clarifying exactly where things are at and how the process takes place. Just because I feel like there's always confusion, and I'll even admittedly say, I don't know every detail about the rules process. All I know is every year, just like a scheduling conversation takes place, there's always assumptions and complaining, sometimes praising, everything in between when it comes down to our rules. And one of the things that maybe is so divisive about that specifically is how, like everything else that can provide a little bit of subjectivity, you can read a comment that says, I hate this, the rules should be 3 pages, let's not make this difficult, we're here to have fun, and this isn't that hard, people. And then the very next comment is, the rule book should be 20 pages longer, and they should be laying out so much more stuff.
I want an encyclopedia.
How does this slip through the cracks?
Yeah, I want Encyclopedia Britannica.
Most people are going to miss that reference.
That's fine.
Because just like last week, when I had to explain to Sullivan Tipton what a rotary phone was and how answering machines worked, and that there was tape recordings in them, to be fair, he's he was born in 2001 or 2000.
But you'd think you'd pick that up at some point somewhere. Like in some pop culture reference, like some movie you watched.
I would think, but at the same time, no. We are getting to the point
even
where
the Avengers went back in time.
We're so old that when you make certain references, but I had to explain how you left your house and you may not talk to somebody for literally 8 or 10 hours. You had no way to communicate with them unless you ran into them. And I said, if they tried to call you and you weren't home, if you had an answering machine that still had a tape, you'd leave a message. And it was a big deal to be able to call into your answering machine at one point. And then eventually we got rid of those to get to voicemails or being able to call in and check from being out on the road. Like, it was a very fun conversation. And needless to say, I don't blame Sullivan Tipton or Mitch whatsoever.
Blame him, but
that's where we're at. So my whole point, though, was just the response that we get, that how different everyone is in terms of when it comes to our rules. It tickles me because I usually see the comments like that almost back to back. They're too long, they're too wordy, I don't understand, it's not that complicated. And then, how is this not laid out in the rules? How is this not perfectly clear and obvious to us? Somebody needs to write these better. So we'll have MTL. We'll get to that story. We'll have MTL, a.k.a. Robert Leonard, join us in a little while. So, and of course, we wouldn't be doing our civic duty without mentioning, election night taking place. To timestamp it, it's 8:09.
That means polls have just closed in a lot of the Midwest states here, because we are in the Midwest. And let me say, we had a little shtick planned earlier. We were thinking about trying to get Prez on and do Prez for Prez, but
not looking good for him either.
Not looking good for him either. I checked the polls. Now, you can still vote on the West Coast.
I did write him in.
Yeah, good. If you want to vote for Prez, Please go out to his website, get one of the Prez for Prez shirts. I do think it's one of the more clever advertising of the year. By all means, I hope that he sold a few of those shirts. And if you're watching the election results tonight, and regardless of what team you're on, if like me, you've got a drink in your hand, go out to Prez's website and get yourself a Prez for Prez shirt or a hat. Either one.
Oh, sorry. Mitchell, you're out there on the board. I didn't realize it. You knew what an answering machine was. Well, then I retract some of my statement. It was just a Sully update then. I apologize if you already knew what an answering machine was. All right. Let's... what we can do until we get to the PDGA stuff is we can go over some of the results of things taking place from the tournament. Of course, we're in that little lull of the season where we still have some big solid events taking place. There's going to be a couple coming up this weekend as well. However, they're not our full Disc Golf Pro Tour Elite Series events. And I know a ton of people are already now in Australia, some being there for upwards of the next month or so with regard to the team championship and everything else they have going on. But right now, we had some A tiers. What did you see, Johnny?
The 2024 Innova Discs Myrtle Beach Open in Myrtle Beach.
Oh,
I know, surprising. I suppose Myrtle Beach could have sponsored it if it was somewhere else, like Myrtle Beach as an organization. But it would be
really weird
but
since they're such a destination place.
I understand that.
Hey, this is sponsored by Myrtle Beach. Well, you're in Idaho. But come see us because we're better.
Come see us. MPO, Joel Freeman wins this, shooting a 1054, 1067, and then a 1018. He made a really nice post on social media. I think it was maybe on the Instagrams about how last week he let an event get away from him. He was leading after, I think, a round or two and folded on the final round. And this week he did not do that. He was able to hold on, win by 2 strokes over that Ezra Robinson kid. Ezra, who shot 29 under par, having just continuing to have a great season. Tied with Wyatt Mahoney. So both of those guys were at 29 under par. 4th place, Evan Scott. 5th place, Ryan Mon, Kale LaVisca, and Nico LaCastro. 8th place, Noah Meinsma. 9th place, Braden Sides. Tied with Austin Turner and Grady Shue. Now, just so everybody knows, I'm going to put a little self-plug out there. Skip Ace is running like a mini after Pro Tour league. It's just 5 events. Not giving away anything, not doing anything. I'm using it for some testing purposes. So we had some of the results here, and it was really nice to be able to kind of... That's one of the reasons I was keeping up on this event, because I was constantly checking that the new system was working properly, and I've worked out some bugs, which is great. Looking over at the FPO field, Cat Merch takes this down pretty easily by 7 strokes. And over Hannah Manis, 3rd place, Morgan Lins. 4th place, Paige Shue. 5th place, Jordan Lins. So you've got, that's your top 5. Cat Merch takes home $1,085. She shot a 10-12, 987, and then I think it's a 990 or
988.
988. There we go. It's a little light blue. It's hard to read from here. So that's your top 5 in FPO. We might as well talk a little bit about MP40. Michael Joe, a legend, wins this, winning $775. And that's kind of about it. That's the event. It's a relatively large event over in this area every year, so it's always had a pretty good turnout.
Yeah, and big shout out to Chad Sullivan, who, of course, very busy in everything that he was just doing with USDGC.
Yeah.
So to know that
Great tournament
less than a month after the USDGC takes place, he has that tournament director hat on, nice and snug, and then puts on this event as well. So big shout out to everyone involved. I see Christopher Chapman as the assistant TD, but Chad Sullivan, your tournament director. I get a pass because I was in another country. There was coverage of this, right?
I have no idea.
I'm guessing there is.
I'm guessing there is. I'm guessing somebody's covering it.
Ace Run, GK.
Probably one of those crews.
Somebody like that. Okay.
I would guess so.
I would assume so as well. So I apologize. I was pretty checked out, so to speak.
As was I, and I wasn't even out of the country. Let's talk.
Not that I watch a lot of post-production regardless, but usually I see it at least pop up, and I set some of the socials aside for a few days. All right, what else we got?
Other side of the country, we've got the Nevada Open in Nevada. Missouri.
I was just going to say, not Nevada.
Not Nevada, the state.
Yeah,
Nevada,
okay.
Missouri. See what I did there for you, Ter?
You nailed it.
Winning this one is Prez for Prez. Andrew Presnell. I didn't even realize that, honestly. I forgot. I didn't put the two together there. Andrew Presnell. So congratulations on your victory, Presnell. You may not win the big election, but you nailed down the state. You nailed down Nevada, Missouri. That's 2 states. Mm-hmm. You got 2 states under your belt, which is more than a lot of other people. He won $1,365, 3 strokes over GT Hancock. 3rd place was Jonathan Fletcher. 4th place, Jake Hebenheimer. 5th place, Levi Hancock. So that's your top 5 at the Nevada Open, sponsored by Discmania. Had to go back up. I drew blank. FPO, Allie Smith won this. She won by 8 strokes, taking home $412 over Emma Arp. Emma, a young, up-and-coming player. I think, I don't know if she's going to be trying to go out on tour, but I've heard her name a few times. Pretty solid player. So Emma Arp, she shot 945, 943, and then 898. So overall above her, just a little bit above her rating, but not enough to take down Allie, who shot 915.4, 969, and 938. I'll mention MP40 because I mentioned it in the other event. It would only feel right. Yasha Komen wins MP40. That is your Nevada Open in Nevada, Missouri.
All right. And then, as I was just alluding to, there is a ton of post and conversation and just pride and excitement galore that is going on that. If you haven't seen it on Facebook or on some of the social media, I don't know who you're following or not following, but it is certainly out there. And that's for the WIFDIF 2024 World Team Disc Golf Championships. That's taking place over in Australia and currently listed as 212 players. And that's taking place the 6th through the 9th, I believe. Some of it is already happening as we are talking right now. Some of the teams are playing against each other. I'm not going to pretend to know all of the format or all the details for it. That's something I'd probably be more in tune with if I was there helping cover it, because I'd have to understand it. But there's a lot of different things going on in terms of play, country versus country, and then the various, singles, doubles, things of that nature. Regardless, 212 competitors, and wish you guys all the best of luck. It is so cool to scroll down and to see both men's and women's, are split out on the PDGA website, but then to see obviously Australia represented, and then Croatia, who has 3 women there, coincidentally 3 that I've all met and had a good time with over in the at the Drava Forester. And just you go on and on and on. There's only 2 women representing France, so on and so forth. But you go on and on and on through all these different countries that are sending over both men and women, and it's just awesome to see. And it gives you that Olympic vibe that we're used to seeing from a few months ago. It very much gives you a lot of that. And so best of luck to all the competitors from all over the place. I think about Thailand and knowing almost all of the competitors that are there from Thailand. Thailand doesn't exactly have a real deep field of Thai players that can be there to represent. However, they've sent over some of their best, including Pichette, who you've seen on my coverage, who's already up to, he's up to a 997 rating. So yeah, pretty cool to see. Speaking of the Drava Forester, we didn't touch on it last week, so I just want to quickly touch on it because I love how they've even changed the name this year. You have heard me talk about this event as arguably one of the greatest events of the entire year. You're silly if you never get there. I've been there and I need to get back. It's called Drava Forester 12th annual disc golf party event presented by Unicorn.
When your event has the name party in it, let me tell you, that's an event I want to go to.
That's exactly what I mean. It's been even branded that way this year. It is technically a C tier, and as I'll say, the golf is of secondary concern, but you get to play one round of golf each day, and then so much fun beyond that. But what I noticed was, yet again, he's returned. He's won it before, Philo Brathwaite. So congrats to Philo, who went there, just edging out Jarno, a.k.a. Yappy, just edging out Yappy from Finland by a single stroke. So Philo defeats Yappy. Congrats to Philo. And local Danica had taken it down on the FPO side. So I wanted to throw that out there. Just truly one of the single greatest disc golf events on the planet. Get there. Philo shows up. He probably won, I'm going to just guess, maybe a bottle of wine. I think that's literally that was the prize a couple years ago. You're not there for the payout. You are there for one of the greatest experiences of the entire year, and just something that you'll never forget. So get to the Drava Forester. All right. As I see you've pulled it up, one of the other big events that took place this last weekend was our Disc Golf Masters Tour, the finale generated by Grit Disc. And big shout out to Callie, not only for a Masters Tour year that she's had, but the fact that this ultimately had to get moved due to the hurricane coming through. So this was moved to a totally different location. And give us a couple of the results there, Johnny.
Sure, we'll run through quite a few of them. MP40, Trevor Harbolt takes this down by a single stroke over Scott Conway. Trevor Harbolt, he ended up shooting 997, 1005, 1008, and then finalized it with a 956. Was able to just barely hold on, considering Scott Conway shot 1007 final rated round, getting him by 6 strokes that round, but couldn't quite make up the 7 strokes that he needed, unfortunately. So Scott Conway takes second place.
Scott Conway, who is your Tim Selinsky champion from just a few weeks earlier as well. So
he's 1012 rated. He's a very solid competition. Player. Third place, Terry Gallops. Fourth place, Justin, I'm going to go with Busyager and Don Manker. So that was your top 5 in MP40. FP40, Sarah Hokum wins this. She shot a 3 under par with a 959, 959, 999, and a 924. 9 times. Nine times. MP50. Brian Schweberger.
What?
With win number 7,602. Amazing. 1008 rated. Beats John Baker by like 11 strokes. So congratulations, Schwebby. FP50, you've got Brenda Wiltgen. Brenda Wiltgen wins that. MP60, Andrew Back. FP60, Sherry Herzog. MP80, Barry Fisher. MA40, Eric Aumiller. That's as far as I'm going. Sorry. All right, FA40, Shauna Pond.
Love it. Congrats. Congrats again to Callie. Callie had recently made an announcement saying that she is basically getting out of the daily touring grind of going, city to city, weekend to weekend.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, this was probably now about 10 days ago. So made an announcement that she is going to set up a home base. She's loved her time on the road. I'm paraphrasing very much here, but basically loved her time on the road. However, is looking for a little bit more of a home base at the moment and has a lot of travel equipment, trucks, trailers, fifth wheels, all of that stuff that she now has available for sale. So,
well, that's got to be, as we saw with J-Ray, we know that the industry right now is on a downswing. And that's got to be more difficult to make ends meet on the road right now when there are less discs being bought. So I'm curious to see, is she going to set up, like when she says a home base, brick and mortar, online? Like what? Like I would love to know more of her plans. Maybe we'll get her on sometime in the off season to chat about that.
Yeah, she has established Grit Disc in Las Vegas. So there is a brick and mortar store that is there, and that's been there for a little while already. And I know that she uses my disc in a box for shipping. That's how I'm familiar with all of this. So
that's why she's so smart.
Good start there.
Yeah.
It like I said, this was back on October 21st, where I'm scrolling down and seeing all this on her Facebook, where she's talked about all those things. So she's got a fifth wheel, a cargo trailer, 2023 F450 King Ranch, and a 2021 Palomino Puma.
What does that mean for the DGMT next year?
I think she says it in here. Excuse me. I know the DGMT will still run as normal. I will just leave home for a week or two at a time and go back home. I'm craving stability in my life. The store in Las Vegas will still be very active, and so will I. And then she has a lot of other stuff on there. So, yes, as she says, it's time for a new chapter in life. So we wish her the best of luck.
All right. We want to talk a little bit of PDGA news at all? There's just a few little things out there.
All right. Go ahead.
We'll start with the 2025 post-event player fee increase. There was a post on Halloween, October 31st. It says starting 2025, the per player fees for the PDGA sanctioned events are going to be increased by $1 per player for A, B, and C tiers. So normally when you used to put in $4 for an A tier per player, now it's going to be $5. And B tiers are now up to $4, C tiers are up to $3 per player. So that's the money that goes to the PDGA to help support the PDGA, help pay for the insurance that you're getting, as well as all the other things that the PDGA is doing. Obviously, some of the more visual things are the marshals going to the events. You've got the app that's being developed, all the employee salaries, all that stuff. A lot of that goes into the player fee bucket, so to speak.
Yeah, and I would add on to that another huge component probably is the continued and enhanced support that comes with hosting an event, in that when you do have a question or a challenge or something that comes up during the weekend, more people being more available, so that when you're running a tournament and it's Saturday and it's 3:00 and you're like, hey, I have this situation, how do I handle it? There's actually a line for you to be able to call.
I just give people Doug's home number.
Yeah. Here's Doug Bierkus.
Here's his cell phone. Just call him if you need him. But
there's an official line that is manned by PDGA staff and others that can help with that.
Person, not manned.
What's that?
I said personed, not manned.
That's manned by that?
Yeah, I'm just giving you a hard time.
So anyway, things of that nature. I'll say this. I know there's going to be, of course, with any change and or any price increase, there's always going to be criticism. That's the nature of the beast. I will say I don't remember the last time that was ever increased.
It's been 15 years at least, probably.
I feel like more than that.
Really? It could be more than that.
I don't remember.
I bet you our guest will know.
That's what I'll ask. But I was just thinking that I don't know if it used to always be a flat $2 or if it's always been. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Cheers.
Point is, the hundreds of tournaments that I've run, the pricing was the same. So to see the $1 per person increase, and that's what they call a pass-through fee. That's something that isn't necessarily a burden on the TD. That's what's gone to the player. If you want to find ways to make up for it or erase it through sponsorship, that's certainly something that you can do, but you don't necessarily have to. So, just to put it out there, if you haven't noticed already, I sound a little bit different.
You picked up an accent.
No, I did pick up about 3 words in Spanish over the week and a half, which isn't impressive, I realize.
You watched a lot of Dora.
I did pick up 1 or 2 words in Mayan, thanks to
that's awesome.
Someone trying to sell me some stuff. Unsuccessfully though. She was trying to teach me some Mayan. Being in Uruguay last week, everything was great. I then went on Wednesday. We had the show last Tuesday, of course. Wednesday, I ultimately went to Guatemala and spent a lot of time in Guatemala City. Had an unbelievable time. I can't even tell you how fun it was, and then got to go play and be at the other course that's there in Guatemala, or the only course that's in Guatemala, just outside of Antigua. And just after a very long weekend of lots of festivities, it hit me as I was coming home, and it may or may not be some kind of, I got fluid in my ears and some travel and probably not enough sleep and too many beverages.
You got the travel crud.
Yeah, maybe.
It happens.
But it happened before I even left.
Well,
and
I don't believe you.
I blame myself for that. That's what I can say.
Here's what I've always said about you, and our guest is in our green room, but you are not the best at taking care of yourself as far as sleep and rest. You never have been. You're kind of an always on the go. So it never surprises me when you get sick and you tell me, yeah, I was up till like 5 a.m. and then I got up at like 8 to do something with the kids, and I did this and I traveled and I did that and I was on a plane and I was licking a doorknob and I'm like, I walked around to the grocery store with my mouth on a cart, like just these things. Like it was weird. You do weird things, and so when you get sick, it doesn't shock me.
And again, that's why I take full blame. I'm not complaining. Any sickness that may have come as a result is I'm good with it. It was all worth it. That's my point. But what really matters now, I think he's ready to go. What matters now is that we can get some updates, some clarification. I'm sure you guys have questions. So without further ado, we're going to bring in Robert Leonard, MTL.
How's it going, gentlemen?
Good. How are you doing,
man?
It's a wonderful night. You both know I'm a massive Carolina Hurricanes fan. We are playing. It's like tied with like 2 or 3 minutes left. It pained me to come over here, but I am here.
Well, I mean, we could have just waited.
You've got one eye. You've got one eye on the game. You've got maybe a half an eye on the election, and no eyes on us, which is probably better that way.
And apparently, I have 1.5 eyes.
That's fine,
That all works out. Well, let's start with some of the basics. First and foremost, what is your official role and title within the PDGA?
Yeah, so my title is Senior Policy and Compliance Officer. Previously, I was seen on the road. People probably saw me a lot marshaling. That was on the operations and logistics team, which handles the Pro Tour and the majors. Honestly, about 12 months ago, almost to the date, I was offered an opportunity to move over with Mike Sullivan, the Director of Policy and Compliance, and just your standard one person's job needs to transition into two people's job kind of situation. So I moved over there a year ago, which is why I was not really seen as much this year. I've got a young one at home and life on the road. I did it for a couple years, but it wasn't a hard sell to move over, especially with the family. So my primary roles are, the policy and the compliance department. We handle all the legal things. Every department has to have, or every company has to have compliance and standards, and especially where we're operating in all 50 states and multiple countries. There's different laws, different policies. Thankfully, our Director of Policy and Compliance, Mike Sullivan, my boss, handles all of that. So he handles all of the legal stuff and all the boring stuff and contracts when we hire people, all of that mess. And obviously, our product of the PDGA, our product is disc golf and disc golf tournaments, disc golf growth, all these things, right? So I am in charge of handling those products and the policies involved with that. So that involves running the disciplinary process, which I obviously used to do as a volunteer, so that was a natural fit. And then all of the rules, the committees that handle these, serving on the Pro Tour Players Committee, and just kind of, we touch every department in the PDGA, so it's just making sure that we're always doing things in certain manners and working on projects and tour standards, and just definitely one of those, like, today is always different than tomorrow kind of jobs.
Well, thank you for that. And I'll follow that up immediately and say, when people talk about being involved in disc golf, whether it's a volunteer or owning a shop or running tournaments or doing anything that's so fun, dying disc, doing all these fun things about disc golf, what you and Michael are doing arguably sounds like the least fun thing you like to most people. Is that I mean, I'm assuming you love and enjoy it, but is it fair to say like what you're doing isn't necessarily fun or sexy, right? Is that a fair statement?
Sure. One of my favorite things that I've heard you say, Terry, is, this misconception that once you work in disc golf, you play more disc golf, right? No, right? We all know this, right? And I have a lot of people that say like, oh, it's so amazing that you work for the PDGA, that you work in disc golf. And I immediately say, you're right. I'm very blessed. I'm very lucky. I am quick to recognize that. But at the end of the day, it is a job, right? Yeah. I have to do things, we have a board report. I had to send in data today to the board. I don't want to do that. It's got to get done, right? So, at the end of the day, there are things that you have to do. But my background is actually in a lot of policy. I was a director of financial aid at a college prior to working for the PDGA, which financial aid people think it's more like college stuff. It's more finance. It's more numbers. At the higher level, it's more policy and federal regulations and things like that. So I had a lot of experience with policy, a lot of experience with interpreting regulations, restructuring departments and business operations within compliance. And so it was a really natural fit, obviously, with that professional background and then my disc golf experience.
All right. So with all of that being said, when we talk about policies and we talk about procedures and the way that things change, update, subtract, all of those things, we have a list, and it's even on the PDGA site, which I'm going to link to again in the chat. It says major changes. But before we even talk about a few of them specifically, what is the protocol for how this process even goes?
Yeah. So previously, and that's important to understand that this is we've shifted procedural in the last few months. So this was kind of a hybrid year for us with this process. So previously we had the rules committee and we had the competition committee. And basically the rules committee was in charge of the rule book. The competition committee was in charge of the competition manual. Through part of that kind of reviewing processes and business operations, Mike and I realized, hey, like these two committees really shouldn't be separate, right? The perfect example was the competition committee is the one who suggested 3-4 years ago, I don't remember when it was, hey, everybody should keep score, right? So then they had to send that to the rules committee, and then the rules committee at the same time was already considering, should you only be penalized if your score is incorrect, as opposed to, I mess up Terry's score, Terry gets penalized. That doesn't seem fair. They were kind of already analyzing that. And we know now both of those are rules, but that was a perfect example of, we didn't realize on the competition committee side that the rules committee was kind of already looking at that back end and how married these two concepts were. And it just realized like, hey, like these things need to be combined. So we recently combined these two committees to form the Rules and Regulations Advisory Committee. And if you actually went through and looked at that, it's still chaired by Mike Krupicka, who was the rules chair. So this is committee work first and foremost. But it is important to understand that everything that you're seeing now was kind of the result of those two committees, and then everything moving forward is that combined committee. It basically starts with changes, right? And ideas, and that can come anywhere and everywhere. Members' emails, staff suggestions, committee suggestions, anything and everything. And it could be just as simple as, this rule doesn't exist, please fix this, please add this. It can be as simple as, this is the dumbest rule I've ever seen, change this, everything in between. The committee then is obligated, right? We're a membership organization. The committees are obligated to review every suggestion. And then basically there's just a generic kind of yes, no vote day one. Like, hey, is this a concept worth exploring? And then if that concept is passed forward, then those deep dives go into it. What would this look like? Where would it live in the rule book? Where would it live in the competition manual? How does it affect, all of these things? So if it gets through that committee, then at this point, it's got Mike and or I have to kind of check it off as staff behind the scenes. And then we put it out for public comment, right? Then at that point, we clue the board in, make sure the board isn't massively opposed to it. And then public comment. Hey, PDGA members, this is what we're thinking about doing. That process happens late spring, early summer. And we have an open comment period where members can email in and say, I love this, I hate this, and again, everything in between. We take that feedback along with other feedback that we get from many of our partners, which include, like our women's committee, for example, is not very involved in the rules process. But you better believe we're going to listen to them about rule changes, right? And we're going to make sure they get that chance. Disc Golf Pro Tour is one of our partners. All these different entities and all these different spots, they provide that feedback. We get the member feedback. We collect it all. And then the committee then kind of looks at it and decides, and Mike and I kind of look at that feedback and, okay, if 10 people are telling us something, whatever. But if we're hearing the same thing 75 times, right? And then we then make this final draft, which is a combination of the original process combined with member feedback. And that leads to what we announced this week, which are the official rule changes and competition changes, which will be in effect come January 1.
Well, what I gathered out of that is something he said way early. He has to listen to every dumb idea that comes through. So a lot of anything I suggest, they at least have to look at it. Wow.
We are a membership organization, and I have some friends here in North Carolina that will have loved to joke about how they're just going to start sending in suggestions left and right. And, and I played a tournament a couple weeks ago, and I had a provisional, and I get an email that night about that exact situation should be a 10-stroke penalty. And I'm like, okay, guys, it's funny. I get it. Ha, ha, ha. Right. So.
The problem is I have to formally submit that. I can't just spout off on the web. So that's a big
Does Twitter count as an official submission?
That's a big roadblock for me. I'm kind of lazy.
How many?
Hey, the Hurricanes won. It's a great night.
There you go. Congrats. Right. How many? Robert on the board asked how many members respond. Kind of in that light, I was going to say how many people will see these things and then after they're enacted complain and say, well, how did that happen? That's not fair. Like basically coming in way too late. They didn't do anything about it and now want to complain about the changes. Is that because for some reason human nature tells me that is what happens?
Well, of course that happens, right? And that's both intentional and unintentional, right? We might have some newer players or newer members that just joined in the process in the last 2 or 3 months that completely missed the first 90% of it because they weren't engaged, right? And now all of a sudden they're looking at this and going, wait a minute, how are you doing all this? Why aren't you doing blank, blank, and blank, right? We actually don't receive that many emails after the changes. I think that's really a credit to Danny Voss and the marketing team for really getting this message out. And,
Good.
We had a couple of people that didn't like certain rules and sent that feedback in the feedback process and then saw that it did go through, that then emailed and said, hey, I talked about this. I still don't like it because of this, this, and this. Now this is going to happen. And hey, I get it. Right. But, I would rather have, 10 people coming to me talking about changing this. How'd you ever know? Than thousands of, we should be hearing complaints about how much we're talking about this. And it's like the political text and the political calls we've all been getting. Like, stop, we got it, right?
Yeah.
But you'd rather say, slow down, stop, please stop sending me this, as opposed to I didn't know it happened. So Danny and Hayden Henry and the people behind the scenes just crushed that process, obviously.
All right. Well, one of the originally, as I put it out there in the chat, what we're talking about, it's also on the PDGA web. Obviously, it's on the PDGA website, and people can find everything and the reference points to this. I was going to start and kind of just go down the list, but before I even do that, I want to ask you, which of these changes do you feel are
most significant?
Yeah, most impactful, and or maybe the ones that you would love to make sure we start with from a clarification perspective. Is there any one to you that you feel like, hey, I feel like this is the one that maybe needs the most explanation, or is maybe the craziest change or the most varied change is a better word?
Well, I think it is worth noting that one of the not maybe the largest piece of feedback, and obviously in the social media world around the original rule changes was timeouts, right? And obviously that did not pass. That's whether you agreed or disagree with it, that's a good example of the process working, right?
Yeah.
We went through, we vetted it, we pushed it through. The majority of membership overwhelmingly said, I don't like this. And then we pushed it back, right? So, so it's always good to start with something like that. For why would I ever email? You're not going to change it anyway. Well, there's an example where it just happened, right?
Sure.
And I'm going to be looking over here to the side of my other monitor here as I look through this of what I kind of find interesting. So, one of the biggest ones that I see is interesting is in 1.12, which is video evidence. Previously, video evidence was not allowed. I don't know. I don't know where it was. It was in Vegas. Was it Derek Billings, the lefty that you were filming, Terry? The guy putted like 14 times.
Yeah.
Is it Derek Billings, Vegas?
Yeah.
Am I getting that right?
Yeah, it was Derek Billings. It was a Halloween. It was a Halloween classic. Yeah. Yep.
And you say that they were trying to figure out where his lie was, and you said, I can't use video evidence to help this. And I remember that. And the original intent of that rule was the video cards were very small, right? You might have 2 cards, 3 cards, even 4 cards at a big event. You're not going to have everybody on camera. So you got to have, from an adjudication standpoint, equitable coverage. Well, everybody's got a cell phone now. And if you don't, the chances of playing with 3 people who don't are slim to none, right? So we really started thinking, is it time to kind of change this rule? Because the spirit of the rule was if everybody can't be on film or pictures, right? And we went through the million scenarios of angles and all of this other things. And the long and the short of it is that we finally landed on what I think is the start of this process, where you can't use it to make calls, but you can use it to clarify course markings, right? Maybe your course borders a soccer field, and there's a hole by a soccer field, and there's a soccer line, and you're like, I don't know if this is an out of bounds line or if it's just a soccer line. You can take a picture of that line, right, and now say, hey, TD, my disc was clearly right of this line. So if this line is out of bounds, I'm out of bounds, right? So very important to understand that what video evidence and what photo evidence is and what it's not, right? It still can't be used to, here's a picture of my disc, is this OB or not? You can't do that, but you can say, is this line the out of bounds line? That was actually the provisional that I took last week, was the rules said it was a yellow line that marked the hazard, and I was clearly in the area, but the line was white. So I was like, I have no idea what to do. I played a provisional as if it was inbounds and a hazard, but that's a perfect example. Next year I could have taken a picture of that line and said, here's that line, and I didn't know what it was, right?
Yeah. I'm just trying to...
Video evidence is still allowed. It has been allowed for disciplinary processes, right? If somebody's acting a fool and going nuts, that video process can't be used for disqualification or anything like that, but it can be used for investigation afterwards. So that has not changed.
So whip out your phone and yell World Star. Start filming.
I've done that.
I know.
And I will continue to. I think that's such a great distinction, and I think it's still going to get misconstrued. But it's black and white here where it says things. It says course markings. Is there any other scenarios? I'm just trying to think of other scenarios that aren't necessarily play, but that could be submitted. But
it's this is the honestly the 3-month rabbit hole we went down.
Yeah.
Right, of trying to think of every scenario. Previously the competition committee, now RRAC as we're calling it, rules regulation or rules. Whatever it is, I already forgot. It's always going to kill me. I don't know why. But RRAC is what we refer to it completely, right? It's made up of people who have never TD'd a tournament, right? We've got players that are members, I should say, that have just played a bunch of tournaments throughout. So that committee has got a unique perspective of all of these things, right? So we can sit here and tournament directors and say this, say that, and then all of a sudden we'll have one of our players, like a Scott Elam, who plays all over the country in the MA50 division, saying like, wait a minute, if I'm a player, this makes no sense, right? So it's a good example of just that well-rounded committee. And we went down this rabbit hole. We went down about people using angles. And to be honest with you, one of our biggest fears was the spirit of the game is making the calls yourself. And does that get away from that, right? So if I have the ability to always take a photo, then why do I ever need to make a call, right? So it was just all of this scenario, all this unwinding. And then we kept kind of going back to that very original point that we had in the beginning, which is, like, everybody has a camera now. Why are we not using this ability? So it's how do you know, and maybe we find out that through this process that this is as far as we need to go. Great. Maybe we find out this was overwhelmingly successful and we can maybe extend to provisionals. But it's that first step, and it might be the last step, and that's just stuff that we don't know until we get there.
Yeah, because immediately I start thinking somebody's going to still submit to the TD or whomever, hey, you know, this was my competitor. This was my card mate on hole 7.
Here's the disc. Here's the rocks. Here's the water line. Where?
That or even as far as like, well, but he's clearly falling putt, right? And you're starting to show that or whatever. Like, I just think the natural habit or the natural progression for some people would be like, well, I know it says course markings, but here, look, I've got evidence of such and such happening regarding the play. And like you said,
that's happening now when it says you can't do it at all. Yeah, right.
Sure. So, okay. Well, anyway, for what it's worth, I think you worded it perfectly in the sense that we'll see if this is enough. I guess the point is these are objective things where it's like, is this in or not? Is this in? Is this, you know, marking? Is this the OB line or is it not? Not am I OB necessarily, but is that even an OB line? You know, so similarly, I guess, could someone then say, you know, hey, on hole 8, there's this feather banner flag here that was put up for the tournament. Here's a picture of it, you know, right behind the basket of 8. Can I move that? Is that something?
Yeah, that's not a course marking. That is either considered course equipment or course obstacles, right? Yeah. It would depend on if they were defined or not.
Okay.
Course equipment can be repaired during play, right? That's the chains get tangled. Of course, I can go untangle them, right? I can repair course equipment. Obstacles cannot be moved unless they are obstacles can't be moved at all. That just affects your stats, right? So if you've got and I've seen that happen, like at D-Glow, I've seen some of the banners on hole 3 break, and players like don't know what to do, and I'm like, it's clearly a course equipment. We can fix this, right? So things like that just kind of determine on how they're labeled and
sure. Okay.
Based on the individual events. So.
All right. So pictures to be able to define. Pictures expand the use of video evidence for course markings.
And I do, as you said, I do like this. This is a baby step. This is a very good first step to see where we can start maybe pushing the future boundaries. And and we'll figure it out. That's what we're doing because.
Yeah, we use the soccer field example. That's the more common scenario is an event had to repaint lines, and then there's like 2 lines, and you don't really know what's going on, right?
Sure.
That's a perfect example, right? Which line is the official line?
Yeah. Okay. All right. What would be another one within the listing here?
Yeah. I would say the next big one is in 2.02, which is requiring TDs to hold underserved divisions with fewer than 4 players.
Okay.
So that is something, obviously, with podcasts and media, is very much fixated on the Pro Tour, which makes complete sense, right? But 99.99% of the PDGA events obviously are not this Pro Tour. These are the weekend events that we're all playing, right? And this is where this change is going to be affected. So first and foremost, you have to understand what an underserved division is. An underserved division is a female division or a division that has an age restriction of 55 or older, right? We call these underserved because, sure, if you go play the Las Vegas Challenge, you go play Ledgestone, you go play Worlds, those types of players are going to be everywhere, right? You go to your local C tier, and you might have an entire calendar year where you have nobody to play against, right? So there was this came from a combination of committees, right? This was recommended by our senior committee. This was recommended by our diversity inclusion committee. And this was most importantly pushed very strongly from our women's committee, right? And previously, and I guess I should say currently, a TD can say, hey, I can't fill this division. You got to have at least 3 people. I got to move you over, right? And part of that reason was a trophy-only event, which we call True Amateur. There was some financial burden on the tournament director, right? So part of this change, it's not directly listed in 2.02. It's listed elsewhere, but it's important to understand here that we have eliminated the requirement to provide a trophy to a one-person division in a true amateur event. So the financial burden on that tournament director is gone, right? So basically what we're saying here is that if somebody wants to play in a one-person division, as long as it is one of those underserved, right, you can still say, hey, MA40 guy, sorry, you got to play MA2. MA50 guy, we're only going to have MA40. All of these factors are totally fine. But if you have an FA1 and FA2 player walk up and they say, look, we do not want to compete against each other, right? You cannot say, sorry, you got to have X number of players in your division. So you are required to have those divisions if people sign up. And that's and you can see when we talk about that, why the senior committee, why diversity inclusion, or why women's committee, why they push so hard for this. And this was something that we've honestly had in the pipeline for 2 or 3 years. And it wasn't until we had this trophy only change to one true amateur change to not requiring the one, that it finally made sense, because there was always some of these tournaments are $20. The TD's going to lose $20 just on that player playing. How is that fair? Yeah. So that's a really big change for our tournament directors to understand that if you do have those divisions, you still don't have to offer those divisions unless you do something else, which we'll get to in a second, right? You don't have to offer MA55. You don't have to offer MA60. But if you do and someone signs up for it, and you can say, hey, I see that you're the only MA55. Would you like to play MA50? You can still do that. But if they say no, I'd rather play against myself, you can't say no now.
Okay. But you don't have to give them a trophy.
Yes, but you do. Okay. Yeah.
Requirements. You still can.
You can,
right?
Sure.
And then Bob on the board just says juniors too, and that all hold true for all of our junior divisions?
Yes. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
That's what I thought. Okay. Perfect. Quick clarification: when you're hosting a true amateur / trophy only event, does that have to be explicitly stated somewhere on like the registration or otherwise?
Yeah, and not only do you have to list it, I don't know where in the changes it is because there are obviously so many. But there is now a change that for amateur divisions, a tournament director has to state up front if they're going to do payout or they're going to be true amateur, right? Previously, it just says you have to list true amateur, right? And you're kind of saying that you're kind of doing the same thing. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to create the practice of every time you set that tournament up, this is true amateur. We will have merch script. Right? So that is a change that the tournament directors are now required to list that. So currently, yes, if you are doing a true amateur event, you must say, hey, this is true amateur. The about section in disc golf scene is a great place, right? If you're using an old school event flyer, you have a website for your club, all these different various ways that we communicate information is where that information has to live. So now you got to say one or the other.
Let me throw a hypothetical at you. Like many of my recent events, I will focus on a very hefty player pack, provide trophies based on pre-registration, and run a smooth event. There are no additional payouts for non-pro divisions beyond the players pack everyone will receive, end quote. Is that clear enough?
It's details. But I mean, obviously, pros and amateur divisions are treated very differently.
Yeah.
On the amateur side, you've got percentages, and if you have a B tier or higher, you have to provide a player pack with a certain value, and you have to have a total percentage of your net payout after pass-through fees. Like, I could read that all night and we'd be bored.
Sure,
right?
sure. I'm just saying, I'm kind of being facetious, but not like that's how I currently list an event I'm running at the end of the month, where it's just that. I guess I don't currently technically use the words, this is a true amateur, this is a trophy only. I spell out exactly what I'm doing and explain that. I don't use that phrasing, and I'm happy to update that for next year.
Yeah, no, I don't think we have to, there's not going to be like PDGA auditors looking through scene, like, doing word searches, looking for certain words, right? I think this is all intent based, right? Hearing that, like, and to be honest with you, I thought you were reading a board comment, not your own.
No, that's how I have my tournament listed in a couple weeks.
Right, Yahoo. But that clearly indicates, like, hey, like, there's no added cash for a pro, and for amateurs, you're going to get a player pack, and you don't even need to say what it is or how much it is, because the tier percentage automatically clarifies that minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And then, hey, you're only going to get trophies, right? So, if somebody complained to us that it didn't say X or Y, we'd say sure, but clearly the intent is there to inform you, and I think that would be perfectly acceptable.
Okay. Anyway, all right. So that's what we're seeing. One of the other things, real quick, because we touched on it right before you joined us, is then on the back end of hosting tournaments, we see a $1 increase per the various levels of sanctioning. Now, is that something that was still within the purview of you and your committee and group, or is that decision kind of made elsewhere?
No, that is senior staff and board, right? So that is
okay.
That is, Doug and people of that stature and the board of directors, right? I heard the number, and I'm not gonna make it up, but we haven't increased fees in a long time. Like, I heard the number of years, and like I said, just for the sake of accuracy, I'm not going to try to guess what that was, but it's been a while, so it's we can get to all the different variations and reasons and all the different hot terms in politics, especially on an election night. Regardless of how we got here, obviously inflation is affecting us. There's no doubt, especially you look at our numbers. We very public about the year 2023 that we lost a significant amount of money. We came in significantly over budget, and those decisions are not mine. I obviously saw some of the metrics that we ran based on projections if we did that, but that's as far as my department went, was basically running those metrics and trying to provide some guesses of how many events would maybe go from B to C, right? Because it's not just as simple as we had X number of B tiers, that's $1 more, right? Well, maybe events reduce. How many events don't sanction? So, we provided those estimates to board, and by we, I mean Sully, and I just kind of said, great job. But no, I mean, it's the necessary evil of business,
okay.
We are, a 501c4, and our numbers are public. So
I think one of the next best, I'll jump you a little and say, I think one of the next biggest ones of conversation is the quote unquote sandbagging. The
non-PDGA numbered player, who the tournament director knows, maybe because local league or whatnot. He generally shoots a 10 down on this course, but shows up and plays AM3.
That's right.
First of all, I'm just going to put in an editorial on that before we discuss it. That's so
rare,
incredibly rare. I'm guessing. Of course, when it happens, people are loud. That's got to be such a minute, small fraction of places where it happens, and it's funny how worked up people get about it. But with all that being said, it's basically saying now, as Johnny just paraphrased, you can, as a TD, elect where somebody can play. I can say, hey, John, you play my leagues, or I've heard you play leagues here locally. You normally shoot 6 to 8 to 10 under. I'm not going to let you play MA4, MA3. The lowest division I'll let you play is MA2. Is that essentially the spirit of what you guys are what we're doing here?
Yeah, that's a great example, right? And there are some asterisks that are very important in this process, right? First and foremost, you cannot force somebody to play a professional division under any circumstance.
Okay.
Right?
I was going to ask about that. So
yeah, so I know here in Raleigh, there's a local player has never been a PDGA member, and until the PDGA required a number to accept cash, this guy was cashing left and right. Probably a 970, 980 player. You know, he can't walk up and say, you know, like, even though I know this, I can't say, hey, I can say, look, you got to play MA1, Jim, right? There's, you know, but I can't say, you know, and you also have to have a number now to accept cash to avoid that problem. A little off subject, but that's kind of the genesis of that, right? You cannot, and I need to be careful with my words here, you cannot make somebody play outside of the female division if they meet the gender requirements for that division, right? So let's just use a crazy example. Paige Pierce is not a PDGA member, and she walks up and says, I want to play FA1. Paige, you need to play MA1. You're going to crush these ladies. You cannot make a player you can't make somebody who is eligible to play in the female division play in the mixed division. That's the first kind of asterisk,
okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And the second asterisk is the age-protected asterisk, right? I'm 41 years old, right? A TD cannot tell me, Robert, you cannot play MA40 because you're too good for MA40, right? You can tell me I can't play MA3, right? Because this only applies to ratings-based divisions. And we hear ratings-based, and we think about those colors, right? But MA1, MA2, MA3, MA4, those are FA1, FA2, FA4 as well. Those are ratings-based divisions, right? You can, if you're rated 920, you cannot play MA3. If you're rated 950, you cannot play MA1. You can be, you can be rated 1050 and play MA40, right? It's not going to happen, but it's possible, right? So you can't also say you are not eligible to play in your age-protected division because of this rule, right? But you can limit MA4, MA3, MA2, MA1,
okay,
or FA4, etc. And the other important thing, and JVD, you've said this very, very clearly and very correctly, is that we're only dealing with people without a PDGA number. We're not dealing with somebody who does not have a number. And people get current and non-number, they intertwine them and they're different, right? Mm-hmm. Because behind the scenes, if you have a number, there's ratings tracking and there's rating information. And really, Terry, to your point about the minute and the why, first and foremost, this was overwhelmingly requested by our membership. Mm-hmm. Our membership really, really pushed hard for this.
There's like one local guy in every like. It's not a huge problem, but there's like that one local guy every state.
Yeah, that kind of ruins
the one guy who like you're like, oh dude, Joe's here. Like he's playing MA3 again. Oh my god! Like there's like 50 people in the whole country.
Yeah.
And I don't want to set the precedent or try to say that I'm saying all you have to do is get 500 people to come to us and say something should happen. And it's going to happen. That's not the case, right? But as we really started thinking about it, and we realized we're like, being a PDGA member and having a PDGA number should offer you certain protections and certain advantages, right? And that's a membership benefit at the end of the day is, hey, if somebody walks up and they want to, and the TD says, look, you have to play MA1, you're too dang good. And then they say, well, here's $50. I want to go ahead and join right now. I'm going to sign up for MA3. And by the way, when you send in the results, send in that money from my membership, or hey, let me jump on my cell phone. Here's my number, right? Now that person can play MA3 because now they have a PDGA number, right? So, and this is not a way to grab membership dollars or anything like that, but that's only a problem for a month now, right? Yeah. Back in the day when ratings updated once, 3-4 times a year, that was a much bigger problem. Now you're talking 5 tournaments at most,
Yeah.
Okay. It makes sense. I'm curious to know, because I think just in general, the bigger sandbagging issue that's not an issue is people complaining and saying, oh, so-and-so is sandbagging. And then you say, well, what's their rating? Well, they're rated 878, but they keep winning MA3. And it's like, then everyone else in that MA3 division isn't doing something right, because they're clearly not playing too high above their rating if they keep staying at 878.
Which is funny, because I think one of the things, in fact, I've been accused of this myself one time. I think the bigger issue, not the bigger issue, but one of the things we see is players that just don't take cash and stay in MA40. You're a 980 MA40 player, 978, 980. Like, you've never taken cash. You can continue to play MA40 as long as you want. I've seen it. I've seen it. I was
so rare.
I know. I was once at 934 accused of being a bagger in an MA40 division. Exactly. I'm with you, Terry. I was shaking my head and chuckling myself, because, you're
anything but.
I'm anything but. But that's the type of thing that more often I think people think of sandbagging is the divisions where you the amateur to pro division, where you, I don't want to say age out, but you ratings out of them, but stay there because you don't have to move. But
yeah, I'm not one of these people that, there's this split, it seems, amongst sports fans who play disc golf of, we should follow golf to the T, and we're an alternative sport. Mm-hmm. We should do everything different from golf. And I think I'm much, much more in the middle. My stance is like, things that golf clearly has figured out correctly, we'd be stupid not to follow, right? And Google Bobby Jones, right? When it comes to there's no bigger, quote, bagger in the history of sports than Bobby Jones, who was winning the Masters and winning the U.S. Open as an amateur, and then going and winning the U.S. Amateur event, right? So that'd be like somebody winning the Worlds, winning the USCGC, and then showing up to Am Worlds next year, right? So, forcing professional is something that's not something that really falls into our department. But if I ever have say in it, we will never force anybody to ever play professionally, ever. There's no sport that does that. We'll never do that, ever, ever, ever. If we were to ever make those changes, it would be, I could see rating caps in age-protected divisions at C-tiers or local events, but I don't think we're ever going to get there, because, and this is something that I didn't really understand until now that I'm playing in 40 protected division, how much more fun it is to play when I'm playing Pro 40, and man, it's just like, man, I haven't played these guys in 7 years. This is fun. And I was thinking, I don't know if I was an AM, if I wanted to do this. So I think, like most anything, it's just never as simple as it seems.
Yeah, because like I was saying, I took a few years off to do, obviously, the media stuff. I showed up at an event a couple of years ago. I was rated 932, 933. I happened to win the MA40 event, but somebody was very upset at me because I had cashed in the past in Open.
Yeah, that's just them not understanding the rules, though.
I understand that, but I will say it's a really funny spot, because the minute I get to 935, 3 more points, I'm now forced to play MP40.
Because you accepted cash.
Because I accepted cash 10 years ago, whatever that is. And I'm fine with that. If I want, I have the option to petition the PDGA to move down. I don't plan on doing that, but just because I'm stubborn.
Again, I think
but in general, that's people not understanding.
Rules.
But I can understand how people can be upset at someone like that, as well as the person, again, who is 950, 960, 970, and just not going up, not moving to the pro to MP40, because they're going to lose MP40 because they're only 950 or 960, and the MP40 winner is shooting 980, 990.
Yeah, but
golf.
They're declining that cash in the first place then. So it should be moving down anyway.
I get all that. Yeah, those are the sandbagging positions that I see more frequently than not. But again, those are outliers.
My bigger problem is everybody that beats you in an AM division is who you consider a sandbagger. That's
every week. Yeah,
every week.
Whether I shoot 990 or 890, if you beat me, you're clearly the bagger.
Yeah, you're everyone that beats you is a sandbagger. That's the kind of mentality I hate within our sport. And that goes back 20 years, at least.
Always.
Yeah, no kidding.
Anyone that beats you is automatically a sandbagger, even if they have every right to be in that division. Anyway, next one, we're going to move on. And this, of course, impacts me, is now I'm running about as many tournaments as I'm playing, which is just a few a year. All PDGA sanctioned events, bathrooms are now required. They must have either a permanent bathroom or a temporary bathroom at each venue that is accessible to the players, is stocked and working, available no less than 60 minutes, is there for all the activities, as a reasonable distance from the course being played, and then not necessarily required at leagues. But that was bounced around. That's going to impact a few tournament directors, and I think overall it should make for a better experience for all players. But that's anywhere from a $75 to a $200 potential increase in expense to every tournament director, right? Is that some of the pushback that you maybe heard?
Yeah, I mean, we heard everything. Obviously, the financials was the most common pushback that we got. Mm-hmm. We heard a lot of feedback that maybe this should only apply to B tiers and up. We did talk about that in committee, about maybe because of the financial burden, maybe it should only be B tiers and up. And one of my best friends in this whole world, Chuckster, Chuck Conley, raised his hand in the committee and said, "So what you're saying is people at C tiers don't have to pee?"
Yeah.
And wow, you start thinking about it, right? This was heavily pushed by our women's committee for obvious reasons.
Yeah, and
right?
As it should be.
Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, if we're trying to provide competition and we're not able to provide basic human needs at that venue, should that venue be hosting an event? Right? And this is a quantity versus quality thing, right? And we fully expect to lose events. I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, I've gotten emails that said I can't run the event here and there, right? In northern states or Canada or some of the provinces in Canada, if you have a situation where, hey, I had this guy in Canada say, like, the roads aren't even accessible by the porta potty companies in these months.
Sure.
Right? Well, we have waivers, right? You can apply for a waiver as a tournament director and explain the situation. Waiver@pdga.com. Just email that situation over and explain, like, hey, I can't rent facilities because of X, Y, and Z. Right. And we might say, hey, you need to explicitly state in your about section. You might need to explicitly state in your player emails. You might need to make sure you offer full refunds to a player who at the last moment goes, wait a minute, there's not going to be restrooms. These sort of things. Right. So, but at the end of the day, everybody, we've kind of had some jokes about this. Everybody has to go to the bathroom. Everybody who has played plenty of events has had that round, whether just waiting to get to that one hole or running off in the woods, don't pick a towel up in the woods, all these things that we've heard. And this is just kind of a push towards that. And, and the cost, pass-through fees, which the player pays, not the event, that can take care of that cost, right? So you're talking it might be $200. If you have 50 players, you have a $5 restroom fee. And if somebody has an issue with that, you're listening in the about section, then maybe this isn't the event for you. And but I don't think I saw a single, and this is going to sound obvious, we've never received so much feedback from women about rules changes as we did this, and it was unanimously positive. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I don't have anything else to say to that. I think the answer, I already know the answer, but seeming that it should be at all events, including C tiers, flex starts are still C tiers, so expectations should still be at a flex start as well, correct?
That is correct. Okay. The only provision it doesn't apply to is leagues, just because the venues and the locations, it's
yeah, that makes
it's just a different conversation.
And so the next one I want to talk about, I'm going to have to hold Terry down because
we skipped over a very important one.
Oh, go for it.
So one above that, 5.02, right? That goes into division reclassification. That is very much similar to the one-person division, right? So we're basically calling this women's mirrored divisions, right? So let's say that I offer MA1, MA2, MA3, MA40, MA50. I now must offer FA1, FA2, FA3, FA40, FA50. Those mirrored women's divisions, right? Now, you are only required to do this through, as it says, after 1 week of early registration, right? Because you can these are, by definition, underserved divisions. They're women's divisions. You can offer early registrations for women's divisions without your permittable, you can only offer so many sponsor spots, volunteer spots, etc. Those don't count toward that, right? Or 1 week of open registration. And basically, if you meet those parameters, you can then take those women's divisions off your registration list, right? Okay. But this change, again, very heavily suggested by the Women's Committee. And when you understand this change, and then you understand the one-person division requirement, and then you understand the not requiring a trophy for one-person division, all three of these blend, and you can see kind of the goal is to get more underserved divisions and more women's divisions represented in events. And the one question that we got about this is that, so you're telling me I have to offer all these divisions? No. All we're saying is that any mixed division, you have to offer the mirrored women's division.
Sure.
That's up and down the board. So you should have an even number of divisions because it's, or you can offer more mixed or more women than more mixed. I don't know many places that would do that, but those three things are very, very important, especially around registration and things like that. Sorry. I wanted to make sure we got that in.
No,
that's a big one.
That's a great clarification because it's obviously very common, and I'll selfishly use my example of myself, my events. You almost always are going to offer MA 1, 2, 3, and 4 or whatever, probably an MA 40, an MA 50, and MA 60, but not often do you see a lot of FA 40s in our region. Let me be clear. In our region, you don't see a lot of FA 40s or FA 50s. And so knowing that you need to put them and make them offered in the registration, at least for a week, I love the idea. And I think in most communities, people won't sign up for them. And then, like you said, you can make the decision to either just pull them off entirely and not list them, or you could leave them there. But to know that you initially have to offer them as well makes perfect sense. It's just, I think that's so regional. We all know, we've been around long enough.
Yeah.
A place like Florida is just simply going to have a lot more FA 40s and FA 50s than we'll say most states. It's regional where we have a lot of our players and the divisions in which they sign up for. But
and one of the best pieces of feedback we got about this that I wanted to address, because we had 2 or 3 people spot this issue within this, and I wanted to address it. Shout out to Kyle Herring in Colorado and John Bisco in Virginia, who really saw this. Wait a minute. This course is like an SSA 70. Now I have to have FA3 out here. Are you kidding me? Right? Like we'll use Northwood Black, right? Imagine you're running an event at Northwood Black, right? And the 2 counterpoints are, well, should you even have MA3 out there if you're worried about it, right? And then secondly, that person can still register. They can, even if you offer just FA1 and you're concerned about 4 FA3s, they can just sign up for FA1. The problem still exists.
Sure.
So, that's where we encourage tournament directors, hey, shorter tees, shorter pins, maybe 1 round instead of 2. There's things that you can do to kind of mitigate those circumstances and still allowing those ladies to play.
Okay.
So I'm going to scroll down a little bit because there's a lot of them in there that, I mean, are rewording and obvious, but there's 2 of them that I feel like are almost named after specific people. And the first one I'll talk about is the 305, the carts, caddies, and groups. The caddy may only caddy for 1 player at a time. I call this the Matt Schlabach rule, where we've seen on the Disc Golf Pro Tour, even as recently as the Pro Tour finale, Matt having 2 bags on, and granted, I think it lasted maybe a hole or 2.
Yeah,
but and it's more of a humorous joke, but it almost requires a rule now at this point where a person may only caddy for 1 player at a time. That is in the official rule book now.
Yep, and I love the Matt Schlabach rule. If we want to unofficially call it that, we can unofficially call it that. But this was started 2 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. This is a very long process. So I think that's more coincidence than anything. But the spirit of this rule is not necessarily because we think, like, if somebody wants to carry 2 bags, who cares, right? Mm-hmm. But the spirit of this rule is that the caddy is an extension of the player. And if you're representing 2 people, is it fair for one person's actions to penalize 2 people?
Yeah. Okay, that makes perfect sense. And I would almost challenge you to say, and I'm so mad that I can't think of his name, the Ezra and Isaac rule as well, that his dad couldn't possibly double up.
His dad's never tried.
Oh, well,
he's picked a favorite kid. I'm sorry, Ezra.
So far,
firstborn gets
but
rule.
When they're on the same card, then maybe he would try to compromise.
I don't know.
You're right. We have seen Schlabach with doubling up.
And the other rule, as I said, I need to hold Terry down for this one because he's one of the first people that I think has really drilled this rule into the world, is 801.02 enforcement and 801.03 appeals. The benefit of the doubt rule, so to speak. Yeah, it has been reworded because the term benefit of doubt benefit of doubt for the player has never been in the rules.
Correct.
It basically says that the phrase benefit of the doubt is not in the rules. Making a ruling based on what benefits the thrower only comes into play after the group has made their best effort at determining the flight of the disc based on the information they have available. So more or less what this is saying, and that was the example, is that first the group makes a decision, and if the decision is split, at that point it becomes the benefit of the doubt. So as versus what we've seen in the past where a player throws out of bounds and someone just says, I think they went OB, benefit of the doubt, I'm going to give it to him. As opposed to that, which is maybe it's splitting hairs a little bit because that decision obviously can always go along in somebody's head. I think of something like a hole 5 at USDGC where someone's going for the green and maybe there isn't a spotter there and you can't quite see if it crossed the land. I'm in that group. I think it probably did. It was close. I'm personally going to give the benefit of the doubt to the player. That is different than the entire group giving the benefit of the doubt to the player.
That is correct. Yeah, and famously or infamously, the Holland Hanley situation at Throw Pink last year, right? That was a perfect application of this rule. We can argue all day long about what should have happened, what didn't happen, all these things. At the end of the day, 2 card mates said that you crossed, 2 card mates said that she didn't cross. Benefit of the doubt then kicks in as that tiebreaker vote. And that's the way to really think about that. That is a tie-breaking vote, right? 3-1 doesn't need a tiebreaker. 3-2 doesn't need a tiebreaker. 2-1 doesn't need a tiebreaker. 2-2, as we saw with Holland and Throw Pink last year, that needs a tiebreaker. And then, it's like the baseball rule. Tie goes to the runner, right? It's the same kind of concept.
With that, I think it's worth mentioning here that and you kind of just alluded to it with your example, the player themselves can in fact have input. I understand that a lot of players will walk up to a lie and they might be quiet initially or intentionally not say anything or even think that they can't have input. They absolutely can and should have input. Now, a lot of people would assume it's going to be in their favor, but I've just heard way too many players say, well, I can't rule on this, or I can't really say anything. This is mine. No, just as you said.
You're part of the group.
You're part of the group, and
Correct.
You too should be actively. Now, you can decide how much you either want to be loud or lobby or not, or how aggressive, whatever. That's all up to you and your own way of handling it. But you absolutely have a say in it. But as we see on the flip side of that, there's some people that come charging in and immediately start saying things because they want to kind of, I feel like, assert themselves and or put that notion in somebody's head. I'm always tickled when I see somebody throw a shot, then they'll turn around to the group and be like, well, that crossed. Like before anything's even been said, and they kind of aggressively will start trying to like lobby for the call. And it's always awkward in the group when the other three are thinking, no, I don't think that crossed. And I'm always like, oh, this should be exciting. So anyway.
No, I mean, no, and everything you said is spot on, Terry. I think that we're a self-officiated sport. We're very clear about that. And at the end of the day, the player is a member of the group. All members of the group are required to be in rulings. It's kind of an A to B equals C sometimes. And and that's like you said, the Holland Hamley situation is a perfect example of the proper application of this rule.
I'm going to say, although I'll admit I did not provide any feedback, but I'm going to do it late and sound like one of those.
Too little, too late. What's what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. One of the early ones, which is division types, where they clearly define the types of divisions to which they apply. I'm just going to say I understand that it's a very complex conversation that gets very heated when we talk about transgender athletes competing, where they're eligible and not, and all of that. I'm not getting into that. However, to have what we deem an FPO division, but to reword it as Women's Pro Open, I think understandably confuses people. Instead of shifting it from what used to be Female Pro Open to now calling it Women's Pro Open, but the abbreviation or the right. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah,
I think that's a swing and a miss, if I'm being honest.
That's fair. That's really solid feedback, to be honest with you. The point of this, we called it a major update because it had never existed. We realized that we're making all these random references throughout the rule book and throughout the competition manual to these divisions and these, except the ratings-based divisions, right? And we realized that we had never clarified what those were in this document. So we call it a major change because it's a section that never existed. But in reality, all this is essentially, this is the table of contents, so to speak, of division names. But no, I think that's really solid feedback, Terry, about the name. That was not something that I thought of, not something that we thought of, and a perfect example of why we asked for public comment. And I'm not throwing you under the bus by that, but that's yeah.
I'm also, to be clear, I'm not going to lose any sleep or start any petitions or get incredibly worked up. But when someone will see, millions of people will see FPO, and then, what's that stand for? Well, that stands for Women's Pro Open. Well, but every other one, the abbreviation, is that the right word I'm looking for?
Yeah.
The abbreviation.
Acronym?
Acronym makes sense when you say MA2 mixed. And it's mixed amateur 2 or mixed, those all check out. Somebody says,
don't go changing the division acronyms, because I'll say selfishly on Skip Ace, that's programmed hard coded into my stuff. If you go from WPO or to FPO, I need to rewrite a lot of code.
Yeah, exactly. So just for what it's worth, it will for sure provide confusion, I think, to the general public when you say, well, what's the FPO division? Oh, well, that stands for Women's Pro Open. And that just won't make sense.
Sure.
And that's aside from, the broader transgender conversation and scope, which I know is essentially
a different discussion.
But anyway.
Sure.
All right.
202 qualifications. This is funny because this makes me chuckle. Qualifications and 1.14 leagues. Players may not compete in more than once in a single event. Each entry on the PDGA calendar is considered a separate event. You, Terry, in the past have run Ironman events.
Shut up.
Years ago, I literally competed in amateur and AM and open in the same event because amateur was in the afternoon, MPO was in the morning.
Now,
same event, right?
Yeah. So I'll give some examples. Sorry to jump in on you, Robert. But
funny enough,
no, you're fine.
Funny enough, I cashed an MPO. It didn't cash an amateur.
Go
figure. I had two rough rounds,
So that shows his consistency level.
I cashed an MPO, didn't cash an amateur. How great was that?
So I'll use a very good example of this, which is the Samui Swine taking place next year, technically in January 2025. We have, so to speak, 3 days of divisions on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and that is a separate event.
Sure.
Than
That's
the
fine.
3 days that are Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, understandably, somebody will say, "But wait a minute! All 3 days of the AM division, I play in the morning. Can I play in a different division in the afternoons?"
The answer is
and
no,
now
no.
that answer is going to be officially
no, and
no.
that's
It's a
why
database problem, isn't it? More than anything.
Well, it is, and first, like sometimes, I was listening before coming on, and you were kind of mentioning some people think the rule book should be 3 paragraphs, and some people think it should be an encyclopedia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I will say to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit, when you see us using very specific, very particular language, there is rationale behind that, right? Mm-hmm. Why in the world did we start talking about the PDGA calendar here? Because of that very example, right? That a PDGA calendar entry is regarding to a date, right? You can play multiple tournaments of different names and different tournaments on the same date, right? Maybe your town's running 2 flex starts, right? And I go play one of we do that in my hometown all the time. But I can't play the same division, or 2 divisions in the same flex start. But if that flex start, maybe there's a Saturday flex, a Sunday flex, a Monday flex, that's 3 separate calendar entries. So that's why we're so specific with the word calendar. It's a database problem. It's a fee problem. There's a lot of different things. There's competitive. There's equity conversations. Like, is it fair that somebody who never plays MA2 suddenly can play MA2 now because their rating says they could, and they happen to have the money to do it, and other persons can't do it? So there's equitable conversations around financials. There's a lot of reasons why, but I personally would love to see a day where you can compete twice in the same event, right? I'm eligible for like 4 divisions or 3, MPO, MA1, MP40. Yeah. So I think it'd be great. But we're not there yet. And there's IT problems, there's technical problems, all kind of things. And so then the answer is to this is why? Well, we're very clear a lot of times with rules that, somebody else says, well, where in the rule book says that I can do this? And I'll say, well, where in the rule book does it say that you can't?
Of course. Right?
It's kind of the same thing, right? The absence of the negative is the same thing as the confirmation, right? So this was kind of, a lot of times rules go from pattern to practice to policy, right? That's a very common life of practice, pattern, policy. I said it backwards, right? Somebody starts doing it, then we start seeing a pattern of people doing it, and then we go to a policy and we say, hey, you know what? That's okay, right? For example, you see that we're defining flex starts. Technically, a flex start is not allowed by PDGA rules because you can't pick your own groups. You can't pick your own starting time. You can't mix groups. Like all these different things that we do in flex start. I played one of these yesterday. I'm a PDGA employee and I'm breaking like 7 rules just signing up for the tournament, But, right? Practice, pattern, policy, right? This is something we should do. Flex starts are, hey, I don't know if y'all know this. Steve-O Story out of Texas, the inventor of flex starts. One of the, that man deserves to be in the Hall of Fame for that idea alone. Coming up with an idea that is just universally done now that solves so many problems. Steve-O, love you, buddy.
It creates others, but solves some.
Of course, yeah. And now I was gonna say
But this is one of those, the opposite of that, right? Practice pattern. Wait a minute, we don't want this to happen. So now we have to write policy to restrict this practice.
Now, in theory, a situation like that could be solved by if a tournament director had anticipated someone, like I think that year you called it Iron Man. Like you're gonna play Iron Man, so you're playing literally 2 rounds a day, back to back for you're playing the morning, the afternoon, then the next day you played the morning and the afternoon. in two different divisions. You would just break that into two different events.
Yeah, that's where I think a lot of this challenge comes in.
And it would just be logistics.
How a tournament director presents and publishes the tournament. That because if you run a tournament and you put all 40 divisions under one tournament, that could be where the problem comes in.
Yeah, you could just break it up
having it on two separate days.
But then there's the flip side of that, right? Is like maybe you say AM's in the morning, pros in the afternoon. They're two separate events, and I can play both.
Yep.
And that's great for everybody except the pro that can only play in the morning.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the benefits of the Flex Start is that you can kind of play when it works for you. I think that now that we have defined a Flex Start officially and defining that kind of and finally putting that policy in place, could we see a change to where in the future leagues and Flex Starts allow this? Maybe. Never say never, right? But you can't build the third floor if you don't have the foundation, and this is setting that foundation for potential changes. If you really think about it, if you look at the majors and the elite rules, which debuted last year, right? That's basically saying here's all our rules, and then here's what's enhanced when we play on tour and majors, right? We have to care about media and things like that. We don't really necessarily worry about that in C tiers. This section is kind of saying with leagues, like, here's what's kind of reduced. Hey, if it's illegal to drink on that property, you can drink, right? You can accept cash as an amateur. All these standards that are now reduced, and we're kind of going with that structure of here's our rules that we want for everywhere, and then, okay, majors and elites, we need to worry about X, Y, and Z. Leagues and all these other things, we don't need to worry about X, Y, and Z.
So I've kind of scrolled through the rules, and we've hit on all the major ones, but you bring up a good point that I think a lot of people talk about, and I don't, as any good any good politician, you're going to be able to avoid the question. Has there been any talks about the Pro Tour having their own set of rules? Having their own subset of rules? Like we've seen different things where we're like, well, maybe this is better if it's just a Pro Tour thing.
I would argue they already do, right?
Yeah,
with the competition manual section that already is for elites and majors. For example, the 5-minute check-in rule was originally just for elites and majors, and then it was adopted for A tiers as well as automatic, right? But that was basically intended for the elites and the tour only. The elite and tour rules specify that a caddy is a directional aid. That's only found in the elite and the tour rules, right? I'm trying to think of other ones. We have much more specific language about a caddy, right? We say that a caddy is somebody walking with somebody, right? Anthony Barella's girlfriend is a perfect example of that. Brittany Dickerson, Chris Dickerson's wife, right? You could argue they're providing zero help as a caddy, and there was always that gray area. Well, can Chris have somebody carry his bag and have his wife? Like, now, doesn't matter if you're carrying the bag or not. This is your caddy. This is what is permitting her to be in the roots. Yeah. Correct, right? So there already are those things, and there are things, and that's one of the benefits of the Pro Tour Players Committee, right? When we have these ideas that we think should be in effect only for the Pro Tour or only for the elites, we send that committee an email and say, hey, you guys are the representatives of these players. We're just thinking about this. What's your thoughts? And it's a very similar process to what we send the membership with feedback, but we're not going to send the whole membership feedback about this. We're going to go to that very specific group of players.
And I guess maybe the question then evolves to, can the Pro Tour unilaterally change the rules without the PDGA? Can they change their own? Can they change their own rules? Next year, if they wanted to say, hey, guess what? I know this is a dumb example. We're going to use all marksman baskets. Everybody's been talking about it. We're going to do it. Too bad, so sad. It's not an approved target, but that's what we're going with. Like, how is that? That's not an option currently, correct? That they need to run these things through whatever committees on the PDGA are there.
Yeah, and the example of marksman baskets, right? I know you said it's a silly example, right? That's not an approved target for the elite level of competition.
Exactly.
Right? So that right there puts the axe on that immediately, right? And we just refuse to sanction the event, right? It's that simple.
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say maybe a more practical one would be they say, hey, we're going to actually allow step or jump putting essentially anything
jump
outside
in my question here, Terry.
Anything outside of 5 meters.
Yeah.
Like that would
just as if any event, whether it be the professional world championships to the 40-person C-tier flex I played yesterday, right? If there is a rational reason where you think a rule it's not applicable to your event or your course, that's where you have to apply for a waiver, right? If you actually look at the caddy books from the Pro Tour, they'll have this little PDGA waiver sticker, PDGA hole approved, right? You can, if you really pay attention, they're big, but it's one of those things you don't really pay attention to. Yeah. So, and that is because there is something on that hole that is not technically allowed by the rules. 90% of the time it has to do with islands or mandos or things like that, right? But but just to say that the Pro Tour would, first of all, they wouldn't just do that because, and I understand this is hypothetical, right? But they're our partners, but they have a seat at the table, right? We have a staff review period that is between committee and between public, where our staff reviews things and we try to fix things that are clearly wrong before we put them out in the public. They are in that conversation. Brian Cole is on the rules and the advisory committee for the rules, right? And he is there as that representative, right? Now we have others on staff, Todd Lyon, Rebecca Duffy, Matt Lloyd, all of these people, and Rebecca Duffy, obviously, director of competition, knows all this stuff with the tour and majors and things like that, right? But they have those seats at the table. So you've got Disc Golf Pro Tour at day one at the committee, and then we have we send them over to Jeff Spring, we send them to Phil DeLone, we send them to Brian Cole, so they are well aware of this and they are part of this conversation. And that's one of the main reasons Brian is on our rack, right? Is to, hey, what are some tour only rules, right? And there's clear challenges and clear things that happen on tour that happen nowhere else, right? Fan distraction. We had a guy at the Worlds this year run out on the 18th green and putt between the lead card and the chase card. Like just stuff that's never going to be a problem at all these events.
No. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Yeah. I'll be interested to see, because I feel like there's a number of people that feel as if the Pro Tour should have a drastically different set of rules.
Well, there's a whole philosophy and again, I'm not part of this, that the Pro Tour should break away from the PDGA and create their own rule set and do their own thing. And I don't think they realize that the amount of overlap and integration that the two companies, the PDGA and the Pro Tour, work together on.
Yeah, like the DGPT is literally the professional tour of the PDGA.
Exactly.
And it's and until you actually go and see one of these events in person, Terry, you've seen it 100 times. Mm-hmm. This is not the Montagues and the Capulets, right? We get along, we're friends. How many times have you been out to dinner and seen all of us sitting together? Like we all get along, we all work together. We all have common goals. It's whatever perception of the PDGA versus the Pro Tour, it's just not true.
Well, I mean, and that goes hand in hand with, and I won't go too far into it, but that constantly goes hand in hand with, well, the PDGA should do this or the DGPT should do that. And not only are they already working together and connected at the hip and integrated, but half the time they have it exactly backwards or wrong anyway. Like blaming one entity when it was really the other one that maybe was leading the charge, or
vice versa,
is making that answer or making that decision. That's probably personally one of the most frustrating things that I see is a blame or an outcry or even a praise for one when it's maybe actually applied to the other. And I've seen it go both ways.
Absolutely,
and that's the internet being the internet. Speaking of the internet, though,
go if you have something. Otherwise,
that's not a good transition. Okay.
Nah. Speaking of the internet, no, the internet had a real big problem. Understandably, the feedback was to, hey, wait a minute. I can't do professional hot stamping at my house, or that's where is hot stamping? That was clarified, right? So explain just for everybody.
I mean, first and foremost, another example of practice pattern policy, right? And we started really thinking about it, and like how many sports can you actually like artistically express yourself with equipment, right? We see it all the time with apparel, right? LeBron's got his own shoes, whatever, right?
Baseball bats.
Yeah, baseball bats, golf club heads,
probably hockey sticks, maybe.
Yeah, but it's rare, right? And it's a unique opportunity. And at the end of the day,
goalie helmets.
Sure, that's a good one. Casey DeSmith, right?
Yep, that's what I was thinking.
At the end of the day, like when something like this comes up, was hot stamping and removing stamps by the letter of the law illegal? Yes. Okay. We start thinking about this and we're like, A, first of all, who in the world is ever going to call this? B, who is ever going to enforce this? And if you have a rule that essentially is, I don't know if the word is uncallable and unenforceable, then there is, I just felt like you just walked into my house there, JVD.
Yeah.
But that rule doesn't need to exist. And then we go through and we say, okay, so is the problem with the rule, or is the problem with enforcement, or is it because the punishments for said rule is too much, too little? Like, where is that problem? And in this example, even if we had scientific data and research that said there is a minute, there is a advantage to dyeing your disc, it makes it an nth degree more stable or an nth degree more heavy, whatever, right? Who cares?
The discs have so much flux in them anyway.
Small.
Yeah.
And obviously this kind of went viral or infamously viral last year, and we just kind of said, hey, like, what's the advantage of saying this? And this is not a shot at Mike Krapicka. Mike Krapicka answered that question correctly. His answer was correct based on the letter of that law, and that was a perfect example of we kind of practice pattern policy.
So you
stepped, here we go, cracking my knuckles. Here we go.
You stepped right into it. If a rule is unenforceable, why have the rule? Jump putts.
Okay.
What is we've seen frame by frame evidence, people jump putting and having it completely not be legal. But nobody in their right mind will ever call it, because in the actual moment, you cannot tell. It is just, I jump putt all the time. I guarantee you probably 95% of my jump putts are probably illegal.
Oh, well, that's why you don't ever get to MP40 and you're only...
Yeah, I know. But so in that aspect, and maybe this will be like one of our final things we talk about, is the PDGA looking at this? Are we looking at this rule that is really virtually unenforceable? You cannot make a call definitively about it, yet every event practically we see somebody make a video post on YouTube or Reddit or wherever where they freeze frame a shot and someone's disc is out of the hand or in the hand and their foot is an inch above the ground. Like, to me, that feels like an unenforceable rule unless it's blatantly obvious. Is this something that the PDGA is actively looking at, or is this just kind of one of those things that's like, well, there's nothing we can do about it?
A little bit of both. I'll be candid and say, have we had, it's, of course, like, we're not immune to these things, right? We know these things are going on, and silence doesn't, there's not a correlation between silence and recognition sometimes, of course. Right? And it kind of goes back to this very similar discussion we just had, right? You have to break it down. Is the problem the rule? Is the problem the enforcement of the rule? Is the problem the penalty of the rule? And once you find that answer, you then kind of figure it out. And it sounds like, and I would agree with this, the problem with that rule is the enforcement of the rule. The rule by itself makes sense. The penalty, in my opinion, makes sense. The enforcement of the rule is practically impossible.
Yeah,
is what you're arguing, right? So at that point, you then need to then say, well, then we either need to then change the rule to where it is enforceable, or we need to change the rule to where it is non-consequential, right? So for example, hot stamping, we change the rule to where we're not saying that this doesn't provide an advantage. We're saying it's a non-consequential advantage, right? So, does that mean that the circle is now circle 2, right? And because 80 footers, like if somebody is in the air for an 80 footer, the minute advantage, like who cares, right? 36 footers, now we're potentially having an advantage, right? But it's not just as simple as what we see on TV, right?
Yeah.
This is the circle makes, that you change the circle to circle 2, and you've provided a massive disadvantage for juniors, for underserved divisions, right? In general, right? So it's just not as simple. And we've looked at data for what Circle 2 looks like, and even if you made that on the FPO on the Elite Tour, it would be dramatically effective. Or not, excuse me, I used the wrong word. Like effective in terms of like the amount of problems and the amount of puttings that it would kill, right? The Olin Scoggins of the world is fine, right? But does Kristen's putting suffer tremendously, probably, right? So it's just it's not as simple as just saying, yeah, and I know that's not what you're saying, JVD, but it's like, oh, this 47 footer, I shouldn't be able to jump. It's never as simple as that, because it's just a spider web of problems and questions, right?
Yeah, I know. I'm with you 100%. Like, I don't necessarily, obviously, I'm not advocating one way or the other as far as like where circles are and things like that, because you run into issues with, like you said, competitive underserved divisions with Circle 1, Circle 2, and jump putts, and then you wonder like, oh, how far back do you take that into the fairway where you can't cross? I just, it's something that I've maybe harped on the last 2 years, is like the jump putt rule is virtually unenforceable. And we know people are breaking it, but nobody can make a call. And where do we go as a sport with a rule that can't be enforced, but we can see people are breaking it? And I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I've been involved in one. Yeah. Terry was there. It was the U.S. AMS playoff between Elkin Grow and Paul Kranz, and Elkin Grow made that crazy putt on hole 1 to win from like 70 feet. Terry was there filming. And I'm the marshal, and and it blows up. And why is the marshal doing? Why isn't the marshal looking at it? And well, A, real time, impossible to see.
Bang bang,
B,
too quick.
Right. B, you're assuming that I have the exact angle that Terry has on camera, which I did not. Right. And then C, if Paul would have said foot fault, I would have probably seconded it. Right. The player didn't make that call in that moment. Right. So it's just. And I use that as an example that, we're not immune to this. We're not, we know this is a problem. And, I will say we're actively looking into this and trying to, and go through that same exercise that we just kind of microcosmically, went through. But the outcome is not, it's just not simple, right? But
yeah, no, I mean,
that doesn't mean that we're not looking into it, right? If every rule, if every thought and every idea and every practice we had came to fruition, then the rule book would be an encyclopedia.
Yes. No, and I know, because I've talked about it before, and whether or not we should just change the rule to something along the lines of, it doesn't matter. The disc has to be out of your hands by the time your foot hits the ground. Does that make it any better or different? I don't know if it does. Because at that point, you can't tell how close they are to coming down with their foot when, like a step putt. Like, we've seen people complain about step putts. Like, oh my gosh, and I'll just use Yuli because he was one of the first step putters I know. Yuli's foot was so close to the ground, it was touching blades of grass, and it was barely out of his hand. And we've seen the step putt become more and more popular. It's a difficult position to be in, and I just obviously. I would feel bad if we had you on and we didn't get a chance to talk about like one of the obvious rules that I think gets brought up time and time again every year. And I'm not saying it's an easy choice or an easy thing that's not going to, like you said, spiderweb through the rest of the rules. Like there are a lot of things we need to think about.
And I'm not lobbying here or advocating for why I am in this position, right? But what we're seeing is that the creation of my position didn't exist before I had it a year ago, was things like disciplinary committee and things like these rules. Like, we were largely solely relying on volunteers to execute that. And without volunteers, you can't expect so much. You can't hold people accountable. And this is one of the reasons why we have transitioned these processes into staff, where we can look at this and do those deep dives and really, it's my full-time job. Like I can really dive into data and really think about this, as opposed to just maybe if I get around to it this weekend, I'll think about it. Right. And that was the answer to a lot of this stuff. And that's not a shot at anybody. I used to be one of those people. It just had to transition to a staff role.
Okay.
All right. Well, as I've scrolled down as well, I feel like these are clearly all important. Everybody should go read up, and they're going to get discussed more and more. But those I feel like are the most impactful, the ones that are going to be at the forefront more often than not. I mean, there's other clarifications about doubles and team play. It literally just says it's a grammatical fix to address to address some stuff, playoff, procedures, things of that nature, leagues, or some information, so on and so forth. Is there anything else that you really feel that, before we let you go, that is, another one you want to touch on or is worth further clarification?
No, I mean, most of these are, as you said, grammatical or clarifications. If you're running a doubles event, we did add aggregate score as an accepted format, which is where both players play singles and you add their score up. That was another Chuck Conley invention that was practiced to policy. Okay, it's actually a fun format, right? But no, I mean, at the end of the day, the rules are always going to change. I've seen comments that why are the rules changing so much? Or great, we got to learn new rules. That's every sport. Pay attention to the NFL changes rules every year, right? Or they emphasize rules. This is no different, right? And when something happens that we've never thought of, I mean, how long have human beings been playing catch, and the NFL still can't tell you what a catch is, right? So it's always going to change. It's always going to evolve. And I can't stress enough that members, please provide your ideas, rules at PDGA.com. And, we're a membership organization. You're the ones playing our sport. You're the ones that at the end of the day we rely on. And if you think rule X is dumb or why isn't rule Y there, this is how that process, that 1.5 year long process that we described at the beginning, gets started.
Okay. I love it. Well, we appreciate the additional clarification and some of the reasonings and background and like you just said, even the procedure in which this all unfolds. Every year, this is going to continue to be the process as you see it. Is that right? I mean, every single
year. Now, we're not going to be doing any competition side changes for next year for other reasons. We're restructuring the competition manual. We're not trying to make it too confusing. But in general, we kind of used to have this practice of, 1 year is competition, 1 year was rules. Well, that's the nature of two committees and the volunteer, right? We're going to be able to fix things quicker. We're going to be able to address things quicker. And I'm really excited about where we're at. And we got an incredible committee, and Mike Krapicka is an incredible chair, and a lot of smart people in that room, myself excluded.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's not throw too many compliments around. No, seriously though, we do appreciate the efforts.
Very much.
Thank you for the clarifications again for us and all of our viewers. And thank you to everyone that's doing the work over there. It's really easy for everybody to be an armchair, quarterback / second guesser, backseat driver, whatever you want to call it, all of those other things that we can be. But like you said, there's a procedure to going about this. There's a protocol. It's going to be available year in and year out. So make sure you're providing feedback. I would assume it's that much more well received if it is like a coherent email with, a little bit of practical grammar and some actual thought rather than, hey, this rule sucks, change it. Like that doesn't get it. Like all constructive feedback, it should be just that constructive, I should say. But
as a notable bad speller, I will not comment.
All right. So you'll let that.
Everyone's
go,
got access to ChatGPT now. It'll
if
correct
you're providing feedback, this is just the generic line. Then, if you're ever providing feedback, just make it constructive, because just saying, "Oh, this sucks," gets us nowhere. So
correct.
All right, MTL, we appreciate it. We know we're going to be seeing you.
Wow, I hadn't heard that one in a while.
Oh yeah, that's
really
still always
that's us, I guess. Yeah,
we're old.
Yeah, that's right.
But we appreciate it. Already looking forward. We're only like 50 some days from 2025, which is a scary thought. But looking forward to close out 2024, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you and talking to you sometime in 2025 as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for what you guys are doing for disc golf. And your support of the PDGA. It's not unnoticed, and we appreciate you guys.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night. See ya.
Night, man.
Robert Leonard,
MTL,
giving us a little more clarification as to these things. I mean, there's no doubt you guys could all read this. We could read it. We could read it to you. But I love hearing more of the backstory, the thought process, things that were considered, all of those components that are wrapped around what makes up where we've arrived at, and just the fact, again, the procedure, because all too often, too many people think, well, just someone's making some rule somewhere and trying to piss you off with it, and it's so not that at all.
Well, it's funny because I feel like the PDGA has been so much better over the last 5 years about a lot of these changes, and a lot of that is social media, just having access to this stuff, like making it known out there. Like, oh yeah, like nobody should be surprised at these rules. Like,
true.
Like this was announced, it was publicized months ago, and now here are the final rules. Like, okay, cool. We took your feedback. A lot of people thought that we were going to see a timeout rule, and as he said, it just didn't pan out. It didn't make it through the final thing, and so we're not going to see a rule next year where Isaac Robinson can say, "I need another 30 seconds here, guys. I'm going to pull the Zach Morris timeout and freeze time." He just can't do that. So it's the PDGA has been very good about a lot of public disclosure of these things. So I'm very happy with that.
Darren on the board says, I'll say it, 2-meter rule is dumb. Darren, funny enough, I think depending on who's also listening, they may not even know what that is.
Yeah.
Which is
it's called the California rule these days because it's only played in California.
Yeah,
practically.
and more so though, it's a little bit of a generational thing. It's also where we've shifted and moved and evolved as the PDGA. And I'll just quickly say that for more than a decade, I'll say a couple of decades, if you landed in a tree above 2 meters or 2 meters and above,
or one Johnny,
roughly 6 feet 6 inches, or one Johnny V, if you landed in a tree or in some other obstacle at that height or above, you were to bring it directly below that line, that lie of where it was, and get a 1-stroke penalty. It's been referred to as the 2-meter rule. Many years ago, the PDGA said, hey, you can choose if you want to have that at your event. And then they further went on to say, you can go as far as choosing if you want to have it on a certain tree or on a certain hole, but not on others.
You can't do a certain tree.
Yeah.
Really? I thought it was just hole based, but okay.
No, I'm 99% positive.
Okay.
You can go down all the way down to as granular as an individual
what about
tree.
time of day?
If it's afternoon and a bus leaves Cincinnati at 6:30. No. So, however, through the evolution of disc golf since then and that rule and those options and opportunities, I think we're just seeing a lot less tournament directors use it in any realm. And some of these tournament directors didn't even know what it was because they're that new to the sport. And that's fine too. So by nature, they're not applying it.
And to be fair, I like the rule in certain situations. We've seen, and one event that always comes to mind when you think about it is De La. Like any event at De La, it just kind of makes sense because there's so often there is an advantage to just throwing over trees. I'm just going to throw over these trees and end up, if I end up near the basket, but I'm 40 feet up, cool. I'll just take it down below and I've got myself a 30-foot putt. You're defeating the purpose of the course at that point, and the way it was built versus what we can do now. I mean, there's things. So I think it makes sense in certain aspects. I don't think we need it nearly as much anymore, especially on the Pro Tour with the way the courses are designed. A lot of these are specific style courses, but who knows? In 7, 8 years, 10 years, if we have a bunch of people, quote unquote, breaking holes. Pretend suddenly our average player can throw 700 feet. How does that break certain holes at places like Maple Hill? Mm-hmm. How does that break holes at Smuggler's Notch? Where now players like, oh no, I mean, I can throw 700 feet. I'm just going to go up over these trees every time. And I don't need to bust up the gut. Or as we've seen with like Eagle, who just throws grenades, and Kevin Jones. You know, there are certain aspects where it just makes sense in some particular avenues. I don't think it's a good or bad rule. I think it's just specific in certain areas.
Yeah, and so Darren, just like I said on the board, first of all, it is largely generational. It's a rule that existed when I started playing, and it was commonplace, and it was always there. I had more of an affinity to it than probably most. I also ran tournaments, and I always thought, well, yeah, there's, you know, I don't like the idea of just somebody throwing around this tree and like Johnny just said, breaking a hole or whatever. I also understand the downsides to it as to how unpredictable and fluky it can be, and that two people could throw into the exact same tree, one gets stuck and one doesn't, and that doesn't seem fair either. When other people say it's just double punishing. You're already, if you're in a tree, you're probably not in a good spot in the first place. That's not always true. Just think, if you were using, for a good example, use hole 13 at Maple Hill, the downhill tunnel shot. When Steve and anyone else designed hole 13, at no point were they thinking, man, I can't wait for the day when somebody's just going to blast it way up and over 14's tee, which could be a safety concern. I can't wait to watch people just take this big old hyzer and go out and around all these trees. No, that hole was designed to go up the gut, right down the tunnel, right down to the little green that it is. Whether it's trees or again, safety or other things, somebody would definitely second guess it if you said to them, hey, that hole in particular, if you're stuck in a tree above 2 meters, you're probably going to see less people take that route. Right now, it's only reserved for a few with insane power. But like you said, if everyone's throwing 550 or 600 in a few years, and everyone's like, well, yeah, I'm just going to throw the hole that way. I can understand the argument when someone then turns and says, well, that's their reward for having that power.
But
I get that.
Again, but when does the reward change? When the sport changes. And so you see that, or suddenly you see, oh, look, now suddenly hole 13 has a triple Mando. Like,
correct.
Oh,
that's another way to, yeah.
You start to throw these, I don't want to say random, but you start to throw these unique other situations and just stop people from doing that. Like, oh, no, now we're going to put a triple Mando 30 feet up the fairway. We've got this giant truss. You have to go through it. And people are like, oh, I really hate the look of that. It was so much better when it was natural. We are an evolving sport, and we continue to evolve. And I truly believe at some point, throwers like Anthony Barella right now will be commonplace. That's just the way we're trending. Like, and it might be
maybe 20 years from now.
Yeah, I don't think it's 5 years. Maybe 10 years, closer to 20, where just your average player. I mean, look at there's a really interesting, if you go and Google it, look at the average speed of a fastball over the last 10 years.
Oh, that's had to go up by at least 1 mile.
It's like 1 mile per hour per year almost for like the last 10 years. Like maybe not quite that much, but like I literally saw it on social media the other day where it just tracked straight up, and that's one of the reasons it also brought into effect things like Tommy John surgery and all these other things, like things that go along with the speed, which is why you're seeing pitchers. You know, when Terry and I were younger, it wasn't uncommon to see a pitcher go to the 7th inning, 8th inning, maybe even a complete game. Rarely do you have that anymore, just because they're so worried about the velocity and the thing. They're holding people back because they're breaking the sport. And they're changing it. They need to adjust and things like that. So we are going to be in that position because we're still a relatively new sport in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. So anyway, long story short, I can understand how people dislike it. I used to be way more hardcore for it, but I can understand if somebody dislikes it as a rule. I personally don't even apply it anymore. Part of that was partly player feedback, people just whining how much they hated it. So when it was all said and done, I generally do not apply it even at my tournaments anymore. But that was an old habit that was hard to break. I'll say that much at the time. So I think that's about it. PDGA, that's certainly a PDGA wise. We did see a new calendar come out, right?
Yeah,
in
the
terms
20.
Of
The 2025 PDGA calendar was announced and released with more or less all of the events. You're talking Elite, Major, A tier. I don't believe they go down to B tier.
No.
Just the A tier events. So you have a general idea next year, and I'm imagine there's probably still a tiny bit of wiggle room for some of the A tiers, but you more or less have a majority of your events already pre-planned out. And
that also includes the Q series for 2025 as well. So that has been announced.
And the DGPT is actually still looking for Q series. If you run an event and want to be a Q series event, I think you have until December 1st to reach out to them and submit your proposal to be a Q series event. They are looking to obviously expand it and figure out a better, or not to say better, but more events to better serve the community who maybe want to make that step up. So if there's a lacking of them, and we'll say in the Southwest, and you happen to have an event in the Southwest, by all means, go for it. But I'm just making up an area because I have no clue where they are right now.
I was just on the DGPT site, which has me a little confused. But that's not a surprise. That's probably more on me. But anyway, those are available. And then as of yesterday, I voted early. Well, technically. I voted from a media perspective on the Disc Golf Pro Tour season awards.
I voted a couple weeks ago.
Yes, I was like, hey, I got to get this done. Of course, it took a little time to go through it all, actually. But that was things like Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Most Improved Player. Those were all some of the things that were on the ballot, so to speak, from a media perspective. So got that all submitted and good to go. Best of luck. Yeah, let's be real. Kind of like Kristen last year, Gannon this year is just
it's a no-brainer.
Is the no-brainer. So keep in mind, some of those awards different and calculated, more so calculated differently from a PDGA perspective. So keep that in mind. Everyone's going to lose their shit in a few weeks.
I wish
when
they would
get
just
announced.
Get rid of the overlap. Honestly, 100%.
Don't get me started.
No.
Because while we're at it, then get rid of all the other effing rankings and rating systems. Because why everybody can have their own awards.
I don't care about that, but some of those aren't partners. Like the DGPT and the PDGA are partners. They work very closely. Guess what? If we have our own ranking system, we're not a partner of the PDGA. Ultraworld, not a partner. Statmando is now. But what I would like to see is if you're the DGPT and you have the DGPT Player of the Year, don't include the fucking majors. Be the DGPT. Why include the majors when you have the PDGA that includes Elite Series and majors and 3 A tiers? Like, pick a lane. Don't because that could be different. You could have somebody that dominates the DGPT but plays really poorly at the majors. And then you could have a player that plays really well at the majors.
Does everything you're saying get solved by exclusively taking out the majors? Is that the only
that would help? I just think Player of the Year, like if you want to be if you're the DGPT and want to have Player of the Year, make it the DGPT Player of the Year. Don't make it like quote unquote Player of the Year and include the majors. Because with our ballot, we got also sent a spreadsheet that included some awesome statistics. So whoever put that together, thank you very much, by the way. And if you're a fan and you want to vote, I think you have until tomorrow yet to vote for a lot of the fan stuff. So go out and look at the DGPT site, find it, do whatever due diligence you want and vote, just like hopefully you did today. But all I'm saying is that it just doesn't. I just hate that, like you said, there is the argument like, oh, and granted this year, probably wouldn't make a difference in probably either field, to be fair, but in the future, we could have this, where it's like, oh, I was Player of the Year in 2025. Oh, wait, were you the PDGA player or were you the DGPT Player of the Year? Like what Rookie of the Year? Were you the DGPT Rookie of the Year or were you the PDGA Rookie of the Year? Like those overlaps. You want to have Comeback Player of the Year. You want to have, like, that's fine. And PDGA doesn't award those.
Well,
kill the overlap.
Yeah, and I'll use a great example to further your point. Eliezer Midling is clearly the Rookie of the Year per the PDGA. 173 points. Next person has 45. Like it's a done deal. Eliezer wasn't even on the ballot for Rookie of the Year.
No. Emily Weatherman, I think, has dominated that for DGPT.
Yeah, Eliezer isn't even on the ballot for the DGPT Rookie of the Year. So I understand the confusion and the overlap and everything else, and I could very much get on board with the DGPT. Basically, I feel like most of what you're saying, if they just simply excluded the majors and only included events that were truly exclusively now, you want to say if that includes the Q Series, the Silver Series, or whatever, but only if it has DGPT in the name somewhere should that be included in
because
the
DGPT qualifications for rookie are different than the PDGA qualifications. Because as we saw, and I know it's been changed years ago, Juliana Korver won DGPT Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
And I know things have changed, and now there's a certain qualification versus how many of PD or DGPT events you played in the past, and it's different. They fixed it. It's a little bit better. But like you said, those two are way different. Because again, Emily Weatherman dominated when it comes to rookies the DGPT this year. She won an event. And she's not even leading in the PDGA Rookie of the Year. So it's so, I don't want to say infuriating, but it's just such a gross overlap that I hate it. And I get it. The DGPT wants to kind of push their awards as if they're just as valid as the PDGA. I don't consider them. Not for those awards. When it comes to Rookie and Player of the Year, I voted, but honestly, they mean nothing to me. I consider the PDGA ones the valid awards. The other ones that the DGPT offers, awesome. I love them. I think they're good. I think you should have Comeback Player of the Year. I think you should have the Breakout Player of the Year if it comes. Like, come up with better or different awards. But to have the same awards that the PDGA has been handing out for 25 years?
Yeah, or to have them exclusive to just their events.
Yeah, exactly. Make it exclusive to your events. And that's fine, but don't include the majors. And I know it's difficult because, again, if you dominate or if you play good at the DGPT events and then play really good at the majors, it's hard not to include that unless you go straight statistics. But unfortunately, we're not doing straight statistics. The Player of the Year is it's like 50% media, like 25% tour card holders, 5% zoo people who work at the zoo, 6%
people that only putt with their left foot.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's so many different things. Like it's just, I know I'm being facetious here, but it's just there are different qualifications. PDGA, straight formula.
Yes. Not
the way of the DGPT. So I understand it'd be very difficult to hold that back, to try to just, especially if you're a fan, to compartmentalize. Well, no, I don't care how they did in the major. We're only counting the DGPT. It would be virtually impossible for a fan to break that out. And that's fine if that's the way it is. But I don't know. I don't know. It just bothers me. It really bothers me. And I shouldn't.
Clearly, and I can understand it. But my initial point stands. You can't just have one or the other, based on the idea of because everybody already has their own different ratings and ways to get there. Yeah. So I'm okay with that, but I don't like the overlap, as you're saying. So I agree with what you're saying there.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I think it would be really cool to have a DGPT Player of the Year. I would have no qualms with that. But and I bet you 9 times out of 10 it's going to be the same player. I would be willing to put those numbers. But let me look at this year. If you had a person who won 2 majors and didn't win any DGPT events versus and took 3rd, 4th, 5th, but then you had someone who won 4 DGPT events and didn't win any majors, that could be 2 different people.
Well,
and so that could be significant. Like, oh, this person clearly played really well at the Elite Series, but didn't play well at the majors. So I don't know. I'm talking in circles now.
Well, and what I would just say to that, to back up your point, though, Kristen. Right, obviously there's a conversation within the DGPT Player of the Year. Kristen, Missy, Holland, or Evelina, all your front runners. Interestingly enough, if you go to the PDGA's Player of the Year, it has Kristen out in front, sizably.
Handedly,
Bone in second, Missy in third, Holland in fourth, and Evelina with 2 majors, one being Worlds, Evelina sitting in 5th place. I think most people would feel like Evelina
should be higher
up than, say, Owen Scoggins. But they're straight stats and formula on the PDGA, which I can also appreciate. So however you're getting there, that's fine. But when you think about the season that Evelina had, you would put her out in front of Owen. There's no disrespect to Owen. I don't think she'd even be offended. She cheers me to that one. To be fair, I think just about anything.
I truly think that if there was a trophy that was handed to the PDGA or FPO Player of the Year, like someone would knock on their door, "Hey, Kristen, you won this." They'd hand her the trophy, and then suddenly out of nowhere, Owen would show up for a hug. Like It could be like, "What? How did you get here?
Why are you in Estonia?
Why are you in Estonia?" Owen's like,
Parnell?
"I think she needed a hug for this."
We're in
Owen's
Parnell.
always number one.
She is the ultimate cheerleader. Hey, WT Force Wade, how you doing out there? Robert says DGPT points winner is the player of the year for DGPT. That could
maybe
be another way to look at it.
That you could look at that.
Sure, I'm good at. However, that goes hand in hand with the confusion for some, understandably, of Gannon Burr. Okay, we'll no, because they both did it on both sides this year. But anyway, to have someone be your DGPT points champion or leader, and then have your DGPT championship winner, like that already is confusing to some, and understandably so. Like, wait, didn't they win the whole tour? Well, they did, but did they win the final event or not? This year it happened that both of our top players did, but that hasn't happened in many of the other years.
And there could be a rare scenario like we kind of saw last year with the way Calvin had finished, like, averaged what, like
4 point
something, like all through the season, but you have a player who wins and Calvin never wins. Then you've got a player who wins 3 or 4 events, or pulls Anthony Barella and then finishes in 35th a bunch of times. That's a weight. You could just definitively say, hey, there's a question there as to who the best DGPT player was. There could be questions. And again, I think Robert Lester's right. We're 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the same player, the points person versus who the player of the year is. But there is a scenario where it could happen versus a straight thing. And I get the PDG or the DGPT wants to involve the fans because that means engagement, and you have more people thinking about your product in the off season.
Sure,
which makes a lot of sense. Just same reason when they just released putting game and all these other things. Like, they want to be in the forefront of your mind when it comes to disc golf throughout the year.
I also will follow that up and say, when voting for, and maybe you want to answer this, maybe you don't.
No, yeah, I'm fine. I'm open.
When voting for they're saying that for the All-Stars, it's the second and third cards, so to speak. So the first card All-Stars are your top 4 players in FPO and MPO. Those are set. Then they allow, like last year, I believe, they allow for voting for the next 8 players, which would be cards 2 and 3, so to speak, at the All-Star event. Did your vote get swayed by the idea of thinking some of those people just may not come? No. Basically, our international players?
No, not at all.
Interesting. Because that's what I thought. I worried that if I voted, for instance, for Katie Tate, like, she's not going to just come over for the All-Star weekend. But we don't know when that's going to be.
Exactly. If we make the assumption that it's a week before the first event, like it was last year, we don't know, truly don't know yet.
Sure. I
would make the assumption if she made the All-Star event, she's probably going to get a bonus of some sort from the DGPT or from her sponsor, and she might come over a week early. So I didn't factor that in. For me, when it came to the All-Star event, I didn't care about stats at all.
Went by people you liked.
I went by people who I wanted to see play.
Yeah. For instance, I think is the whole point.
One of my players who I picked was Luke Taylor.
Sure.
And he didn't have the best season, but he played really well at Worlds and really well at what was the event right after Worlds?
He played originally good at Preserve, then Worlds.
Preserve, Worlds.
And then GMC or one of them.
Yeah, it was GMC. I wanted to see him play. Like, he's one of those guys that's like, no, I don't care if Simon Lizotte had a better season than him, and I looked at, they don't have your results for who you picked for All-Star in your response here, because I just looked at my responses. But I remember picking, I don't know if I picked Simon. Like, I kind of just thought, like, I see Simon all the time.
Yeah, you didn't.
Yeah. Does it have
Yeah,
yeah, it does have. Okay, so yeah.
But anyway, point being,
so I didn't pick Simon. I picked Luke Taylor instead, because that's a guy I want to see play, because he's young, he's fresh, he's exciting. He seemed really fun. It was like, cool. These are the people I want to see play. Not necessarily the best players, not the people who I don't maybe find quite as exciting. And
Sure.
that was for the All-Star portion of it.
Yeah, and that's why,
which is different than like your Player of the Year stuff. Player of the Year, I went almost exclusively
straight ticket,
pretty close. Straight
Yeah.
ticket, like hey, these are who I feel the best players, and you kind of rank them as whatever. So
yeah, all right. A couple quick things before we get into an after show here. First of all, this weekend, super excited, as we were just talking, Disc Golf Pro Tour, the Mary Sunshine House. I'm sorry, is it a classic or is it an open? Either way, I'll be there.
It is an event on the new Skip Ace.
Mary Sunshine House, though, down at Oconee National Disc Golf Club or Disc Golf Course. Super excited to be back down there. 3 rounds of coverage. Plan right now is to, in fact, give you guys next day coverage. Don't hold me to that, but that's the plan, and I think that's pretty practical for us to pull off. So super excited to do that. Next weekend after that will be the Phoenix Ladies Open. So that's what's kind of on the radar. And another quick plug, Cold Turkey is up and running. Registration's up and running. We're about half full. We still have almost a full month, but about half full on both Saturday and Sunday's various divisions. So please go out there, get signed up. And if you can't play either of those days or give a full day to it, to the 2 rounds of 18, there is a flex start on Saturday where you play 2 rounds at Red Fox. So, and I've been doing that for a number of years. 2 people just signed up during the podcast tonight for that. So we're up to about a half dozen of those, but excited to have you guys for those events. That's it for now.
Yeah,
we'll get into some other random stuff during the after show. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about what I saw over in Guatemala, as it was a really good time. Chris and the crew doing a great job over there. All part or a follow-up to a Paul Macbeth Foundation event and install from a few years ago. So we thank Robert Leonard from the PDGA for joining us tonight. For Johnny V, I'm the disc golf guy. We're going to take a quick break, and then in the after show, we'll have some more action for you where we'll give away some stuff and talk about, whatever else is going on. We'll see you then when you step inside the Smashbox.
Thank you to our $2 and above patrons. Your name is listed below in the credits. If you are interested in being listed as a producer in the SmashBoxxTV credits and supporting this and other fine podcasts, please visit patreon.com/SmashBoxxTV.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to SmashBoxxTV Podcast 531's After Show. Time and date stamp 10:34 p.m. on Election Day 2024.
You voted today?
I got the sticker right here, bro.
I didn't see the sticker. Okay.
Blending right in.
I voted as well this morning. I went right after I dropped my daughter off at school. It's like an extra 2 blocks down the road, so I was like 235 or something in my district. So
I not only voted, but I thought I'd be...
You voted twice.
I'd
Way to
be
go.
extra patriotic, and I managed to get a few more votes in other
Nice.
places.
I invited a friend of ours over and asked him if he could help me fill out some spare ballots that I had.
Yes. No, I'm such an idiot, which I know. I thought, well, I'll go around 10 a.m. That will be when it's most dead. And 10 a.m. had come and gone, and I'm in the midst of doing some things, and blah, 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 blah. I don't get there. Next thing you know, it's closer to 1 p.m. Well, then it's lunch time, and I'm like, that's probably not smart.
I don't know if people would go at lunch because they only have an hour for lunch, let's say, if they're
You
at
don't want to
work.
risk it?
And you don't want to risk
Okay,
it. You're like,
well,
I'm
maybe.
here, and there's like,
Well,
there's
then
40 minutes of wait or something.
Then I thought, I'm definitely not gonna risk going late afternoon, early evening. So right around 1 o'clock, I go over to the local technical college, Waukesha County Technical College, just a few seconds from my house practically. And I go there. It took me longer to park and walk into the place than it took me to get all the way through the ordeal. Now, I will say this. I now regret using the digital machine that basically just digitally prints it onto the vote,
Okay.
and then I feed that vote card still into the regular machine.
You had a choice. I don't have a choice.
Yeah, I had a choice. There was apparently 2 digital machines, and then obviously unlimited.
In my district, they just hand me a pre-filled out one, so I don't have a choice.
It took me so much longer to click. When I wanted to write someone in to be funny, I had to like type it up, like all this other stuff. And anyway, so it prints out, and then I go submit it. It reads through just fine, and off I went. So there was literally 0 people in line.
Mm.
There were people meandering, just about to get in line after me. A few people that were like 30 seconds ahead of me in terms of the process. I
had no wait as well, which I don't know if
right in and right out.
Which I don't know if it's good or bad. I live in a pretty blue area in general, so I don't know if it was good that I walked in. And I know a lot of people early voted. Like that was
Correct.
very big this year. I walked in, and there was one person. There were 3 people checking IDs and whatnot, and so one register, so to speak, was open. I walked up, she checked it, handed me my stuff, handed me my ticket, and the next people handed me my ballot. I walked over, went fill. Walked over, fed it in, and walked out. It was like a 3-minute process, which was great.
Yeah. It's hard to argue with that. So
No,
I don't care how you voted. I hope everyone though that felt informed enough to make an educated choice of any capacity. I just hope that you exercised that right to do. So
I agree.
And who's to know as of right now? What are we even seeing?
It basically,
just to give a quick update.
As of right now, and I know this is going to sound silly, probably on Friday when maybe things have been decided. It's going just as everyone kind of expected. All the red states have gone red. All the obvious blue states have gone blue. The purple states, as we say, the blue wall up top, and Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, those are all kind of just still too close to decide.
Sure.
So nothing at this point that we know is decided.
All right. Yeah, like you said, it's still going to probably be a couple of days, and a lot of people saying, "Man, I can't wait till Tuesday when it all ends," and it's not going to, because
I think that a lot of people
going to be too close.
Yeah, a lot of people say that because they just don't want to get texts. They don't want to see commercials. Like my kid jokes that when he watches YouTube, he sees, and he can't even vote. He's only 15. He's just like, "Oh, I'm so sick of these ads." I'm like, I get it. Probably should have YouTube Premium or something, but no, I think that's when people are happy that it's done. I think that's more so what they're happy about. But, we'll see what happens.
We shall see. You mentioned earlier, some off-season content continues to roll out. Jomez Pro Putting Game, things of that nature. I think you're going to see the standard influx now of A tiers. Obviously, my channel is going to be having a number of events, including this upcoming weekend. I know the GK Pro guys are heading to the event in Puerto Rico. That's going to be taking place in December. I know that one is going to have some coverage. Things like that. I think you're just going to continue to see a lot of that that stuff pop up and be available. So disc golf's not going anywhere anytime soon in terms of entertainment value. The NADGT
Finale is next week.
going on down in Texas.
This
That also
weekend.
They've attracted a number of our top pros that will have some attendance down there. I think I saw Luke Humphreys and Bradley Williams, KJ are all down there. I think I saw Gannon's going.
Wow.
Maybe Eldon Harris, if I recall, and a handful of others. Naturally, I think you're going to see a number of our top pros will be there and be present and be taking it in some capacity. So hopefully anyone that's attending gets their chance to rub elbows with some of those top players.
And they should. They're all pretty approachable, other than Gannon.
Yeah,
he's too tall. Like, he's just scary.
All right, I want to quickly just talk about, and maybe I'll get around to another separate video. I know they're going to do Mitch, who was on the board way earlier at the night, talked about it, where we'll see a Uruguay update that's released from the Paul McBeth Foundation. But I want to give a quick recap of playing over in Guatemala. For those of you that maybe didn't see or it's been a couple years removed, the Paul McBeth Foundation, I believe it was the second ever. La Paz, I know, was the first ever. La Paz, Mexico. I believe the McBeth Foundation's second ever one was Guatemala. I feel like I should know this. Guatemala. It's still tough to spell after all these 10 times I've tried. Put in about 3 or 4 years ago. There's a YouTube video on Jomez from September 30th of 2022. Put in all those years ago as an early Paul McBeth Foundation course. Chris was one of the main locals, was the main local driving that project. Chris had moved from the States 15, 18, 20 years ago or so at that time. Runs a expedition type business and is super passionate about disc golf. They have this beautiful property, which still is a golf course, a ball golf course. And it's located about 20 minutes outside of Antigua. And if you know anything about Guatemala, or if you've ever learned anything about Guatemala, every single search result about Guatemala tells you to go to Antigua. Understandably so. Okay. Incredibly beautiful city. Just one of the coolest places I've ever visited. It gives me a lot of Tallinn vibes because you're in an old city, the cobblestone streets, that type of stuff. So it kind of gives you that vibe, just really historic, and everyone's walking around taking it in. And so it's about 20 minutes outside of Antigua, roughly an hour to an hour and a half outside of Guatemala City, and at some significant elevation around between 6,500 and 7,500 feet. And it's at a golf course. So going there and playing there was like playing any other solid disc golf course that you would play anywhere else. Like you would never think of what city or state or whatever you're in. Well, except for there might be some active volcanoes off in the distance and some beautiful mountains, but just the overall course and the feel and the concrete tees and the Discraft, baskets, everything about that top notch, great design. They originally put in 18 holes with the McBeth Foundation, and semi-recently added 17 new positions for 17 of the holes. Hole 10 stays in the same spot the whole time, which is kind of a signature hole, so that makes sense. But they have then 17 B positions, and what was really awesome is we played in the morning, which also felt weird, doing a scorecard.
Oh, geez, yeah.
All of those things that we're not used to doing anymore. We played all 18 holes in the A position. We had our lunch break and then played the course again, all in the B position. So I essentially got to see the two completely different layouts that are presented out there. Lunch was on site that you could get. Just everything about it was awesome. And they had 30, let me double check. 30 juniors, I think is what it was.
That's a lot of young people.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm going to spend 2 seconds to just double check it. But I want to get it right. Monta Maria Disc Golf is where the information is at. They had, oops. Oh, come on. It was 64 competitors, 12 divisions, 29 juniors. 29 out of 64, nearly 50%.
Or no, 29 out of 64.
Yeah, nearly 50% were juniors. Incredible. Just absolutely awesome to see. 4 different countries were represented, which was a little bit, I was surprised it was that few. Obviously, so it was Mexico, Finland. I played with Johannes. Mexico, Finland, the U.S. and Guatemala. Awesome. So, tip of the cap. Thank you. It was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I went uncontested. There was not an MP40 division, so I had to play MPO, and then there wasn't anyone in MPO. And so I was asked, did I care about the round or playing? And oddly enough, I cared just as much about playing, even though I was uncontested. I cared maybe even more because I thought about, well, I still want to shoot a good score out here. And in the A pins, I think I shot a 4 under, and in the B pins, I shot a 6 under, a bogey-free 6 under, and it was a lot of fun. Could have shot 100 over.
It would have been
mattered.
Yeah.
But it was a great time. So thank you to Chris. Thank you to everybody involved. Super good time out there. So, needless to say, go to Guatemala.
Just swing by.
That was the 3rd year of the Monta Maria Open, commonly held, I guess, in November or in that kind of general time frame. So put it on your calendar for next year. Spend a day or two in Guatemala City. Spend 2 or 3 or 4 days out in Antigua, and then go to the lake that everybody tells you to go to that I didn't get to because I ran out of time. But unbelievable people, and I had such a good time, and I'm excited to see what's going to come of it moving forward. There's my abbreviated, super solid review there of Guatemala.
Sounds like a fun time.
It was great.
Well, good for you.
Yes, it was so fun. Oh, and I was there on Halloween. So, like, you're in a major metropolitan city.
They celebrate it pretty well.
Yeah, Yeah, Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
Right? It is part of the theme, but then just straight up Halloween costumes were very much the standard as well.
What was the most popular Halloween costume you saw? Or was it pretty varied?
It was pretty varied.
Was there one that surprised you? Like, oh, I wouldn't have thought, like...
No, I didn't see anything that was that crazy. I think I walked 11 miles one of the days, just walking around, sightseeing. The first day I got there on Thursday. And the costume that I saw that got the most reaction, surprisingly, were 2 people were in a Minecraft costume, which was essentially just a box.
A box head, yeah. Which I saw you wearing in college.
That's true. But it was like just the fact that I followed them for a couple blocks during this very touristy area. And so many people were just enamored by that costume. And I even asked my daughters, I'm like, hasn't this been around a while? And they're like, yeah, we don't get why it was such a big deal. I'm like, I don't know either, but it definitely was one of the number 1 hits that I saw down there. So people were all about the costume, and they've got no shortage of places to go out and have a good time in Guatemala City, or in Antigua for that matter. So get on over there. When are you going to go to Guatemala? You think you'll get there?
Probably never. Think about, when will you ever go to Guatemala again?
I'd go out of my way to go back there. If I'm going down to Colombia, Panama,
sure, you'd swing. You'd drop in on the way back.
I want to see all of those places as well: Colombia, Panama, other parts of Mexico that I haven't been to yet. Now that I've had a taste of it, so knowing you're kind of obviously in that general region at that point, I can't see a world where I don't get back to Guatemala City.
I don't know.
I think that's going to happen. Uruguay, on the other hand, I love the people and it was an amazing time. That's just so much more south,
so far
way down
south,
at
out of your way,
the southern tip. But with where Guatemala is located, that's why I think
it's a good hub.
It's going to continue to be. No, and Chris, as you write, did I take in Lake Atitlan? I did not. That's the lake I was talking about. I know every single video in Google search tells you to go there. It's like 2 hours from where I was, and I literally didn't have enough days to get out there. But cheers from Germany, as you say. All right. What else we got?
Not a heck of a lot. We have patreon.com/SmashBoxxTV, where you can go and sign up to be a Patreon supporter of our fine podcast, where every week we give you a chance to win a prize. And this week we're doing 2.
Yeah, we are.
Dose, Terry.
Yeah.
Dose.
No, dose.
Yeah, that's as far as you need to go.
Okay. Dose, yes.
2 of them, Terry.
2 of them, because I was out of the country last week, so it makes sense that we're going to have a couple of them this week. I'm going to reach out to you pretty soon. By this time next week, I'll for sure have it locked in terms of the cold turkey discs and some other things I'm getting custom stamped. You may want to wait another week. I'll reach out to you, the 2 winners here this week, and see if you want to wait or if you want something else. But custom stamped cold turkey discs are going to be pretty sweet as well, and those are in the pipeline. But for now, let's draw 2 winners, one from last week, one for this week.
We have 120 people eligible. Like I said, patreon.com/SmashBoxxTV. Just, for as little as $1 a month, you can help support us. It all does add up, and it helps keep us loud, live, and independent. So we can't be bought. We can we can totally be bought, but we can run our mouths right now without any fear of retribution from the PDGA or the DGPT or Big Disc
or
the Electric
Disc
Company,
Golf World Tour,
or the Disc Golf World Tour,
or the American Disc Golf Tour.
None of them can hold us back.
No, we say what we want here.
That's right. Terry, what number should we generate?
Dose.
All right. For our first prize, our number is not 14. It is 5.
Dang, keeping it low. Cinco.
5. Cinco, as Terry says. Cinco. I sorted it by address. So all of our Smashies are up at the top because they have the high number ones. Tim Glass.
Sweet.
Wait, did Tim win like last week?
Not last week, but it's been a minute.
It's been a minute? Okay.
Congrats to you, Tim.
All right, so I got Tim Glass. Tim Glass, congratulations. But we're not done.
No, we've got more. What? There's more to give away?
There's more to give away. We're going to give away another
like more
prize.
Candy in the bucket when you're Halloween
Have you been snacking on Halloween candy?
Do I look like I snack on Halloween candy?
You do look like you do.
Okay, I do. So I did.
Too.
My daughter, surprisingly, when I got home, said, yeah, there's a bag in the living room. I've got what I want. And I think she's already sick of the haul that she had.
That's a heck of a haul.
Because the bag was still pretty full of lots of good stuff. So I just think she's already sick and over the candy, which I'm here for.
That's great. Did she leave any Reese's peanut butter cups?
Yeah, I think there's a couple in there. Yeah.
Wow.
And lots of Kit Kats.
Unheard of. Like, you leave
see, my girls
like little
don't
Twizzlers.
Like
you leave for me, Snickers, maybe.
Sure.
Like, just
Baby Ruth.
Ugh.
Who eats those?
Nobody. They're just filler.
Somebody's got to eat those. If they keep making them.
I don't believe they do. I think it's a lie.
Who eats Baby Ruth?
I think that's what's left over from all the good candy, and they just drop it into some machine and be like, here's a Baby Ruth.
Yeah, so, I don't know.
Anyway, our next number we're going to generate. I have been snacking too, by the way.
I know.
Just the very next one?
No, let's go 2 more.
All right, 2 more. All right. It's not number 58. It is higher or lower than 58, Terry?
Well, we're going to go higher. They've all been pretty low.
And our next number is 49.
Told you.
Wrong. You're always wrong. I love it. 49. Our next giveaway is his name is Bruh. Hey, Bruh.
It was a while ago. He won as well.
Yeah, Bruh. Row 1. Philip is his name, but he just puts down Bruh. Thanks,
Love it.
Bruh. You win a prize. We will get you your prizes, Bruh and Tim. Both of you will, Terry will reach out to you at some point, and we'll make sure to verify your address, which I believe we have for both of you. And we'll ship those out once Terry gets maybe some stuff taken care of.
Yeah. Christian, thank you to both of you guys, and thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers. Let me say that first. Christian, who's out on the board, then says, you follow the World Team Disc Golf Championship in Perth, Australia. We talked about it briefly earlier. I think it's just getting underway, as it is already Wednesday over there in Australia, and things are kicking off, and we're seeing some teams square off against each other. So, yeah, go out and check it out. It's going to be, because of not only that event and all of the play that comes from that event, but then I think they have like 4 more A tiers or B tiers and big events over the next month or so. We're going to see a ton of stuff coming out of Australia. So super excited. I believe that Gatekeeper, excuse me, because we have a Gatekeeper and a GK. Gatekeeper, I believe, is going to be one of the primary filmers, film crew, production crew of a bunch of stuff going on over there. So looking forward to it all.
All right.
I think that's about most of things.
Yeah.
I feel like I could keep a weekly log that check another week now off that my 16-year-old has not
Crashed a car.
A car.
That's good.
She did get a parking ticket already.
Okay.
However, it was just a few blocks from our house. Dog sitting. She was dog sitting along with her sister over the weekend.
There goes that dog sitting money.
Exactly. And fair or not, I'll just share this with the world. She's like, I didn't know I couldn't park out there overnight.
Ignorance is no excuse.
That's
for
what I
the
told
law.
her, of course. I yelled it at her. No,
I hope so.
Of course I told her that, but it dawned on me. I never told her she couldn't. You wouldn't really know that.
Yeah, you need to know your city's rules on whether or not it's technically snow season and what side of the road you can park on certain nights. Like I know I think it was Oshkosh that and I know it was even downtown Milwaukee.
I was just gonna say Milwaukee.
Yeah, you park on odd days. You park on the odd side of the road where the odd house numbers are, and even on even. And if there's a snow emergency, there's some places you can't park at all.
Yeah,
like those are things you need to learn, and it's unfortunate for her, but
yeah, she
boo hoo, kid, deal with life.
Yeah, I told her. You ready to? And then I said, you ready to go to work? 2 out of your 3 hours are going to get washed out pretty quickly by you having to pay that ticket. So it did make me think, though, what else didn't I teach her or explain or tell her? And that's why I'm sharing this with the world is, so if that's something you need to share with your kid or your soon-to-be driver is there a local law like that you wouldn't necessarily, we live in a kind of a small village, kind of like yourself. And every city, every municipality has slightly different rules about parking in the street, whether it's the time of year, whether it's snow or not, or just generically. Like, as we both know, she could have called in and being able to legally park there for the night, but she had no idea that she even needed to. So kind of, you live and you learn, I think is what they say.
That is true.
Okay. I think with that, we're going to cut it. It has been 3 hours. What do you know?
We can wrap this up.
Holy cow. Where'd those 3 hours go? Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you to Robert Leonard from the regular show. Hopefully you guys got more insight about the whole process with regards to the disc golf, PDGA and overall disc golf rules and regulations is what I was trying to say. Next week, we may know who our president is. It's It's going to be a new one. I guess we know that no matter what.
Yep.
And the world will keep on spinning one way or another. So
I think I already know.
Be kind to your neighbors and friends out there and stay safe, everyone. For Johnny V, I'm the Disc Golf Guy. That's podcast 531's After Show. We'll see you next week when you step inside the Smashbox.